So we'll go ahead and get started then. So good afternoon. This is the January 25th, 2022 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. I'll call this meeting to order and it's 1 o'clock. Let's go ahead and start with the introductions of the commissioners. My name is Kelly Wemple. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects. Up next, we have Brad.
Hi, I'm Brad Gassman. I'm an architect nominated by History Colorado.
All right. No Aaron, no Graham. Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Johnson. I'm a historic preservation project manager and I was nominated by the community at large.
Gary.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
And Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
Great. Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Jen Patio. I'm landmark preservation staff.
Great. All right. We don't have any meeting records up for approval today, so we'll move past that. We like to reserve some time at the beginning of every LPC meeting for public comment period. This is not for any of the projects that are on the agenda today. If you have comments on those, there will be separate comment periods that we'll call later. But if you have a comment on general preservation matters, this is the time to do it. So if you're joining by phone, please dial *9 on your keypad. That raises your hand so we know to call on you. Or you can email landmark@denvergov.org with your name, phone number, and what you'd like to speak on today. If you're joining via computer, use the hand raise button at the bottom of the screen on Zoom. Any comments?
I don't see any hands raised.
All
So
right.
no.
Then let's go ahead and move forward with the consent agenda. We have 2 projects on consent today. So were there any comments from commissioners on either of these? Not necessarily comments. Any questions for staff? Anything we want to pull off consent? And if not, would someone like to make a motion?
Sure, Madam Chair, I'll make a
Madam,
motion. Oh,
Go for it, Julie.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. 1270 Poplar Street, St. Luke's Episcopal Church, and 126 West Archer Place in Baker neighborhood.
Thank you, Julie. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Brad. All right, then I will call for the vote. So Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote, 5 votes, so the motion passes and the consent agenda items are approved. So if you're with us today regarding one of the consent agenda projects, your project has been approved. So feel free to hop off the call if you'd like. We're going to move into design review now. And actually, it's been brought to my attention that the last project on our design review agenda today needs to have a continuation to the next meeting. I believe the applicant has requested one. So there might be some members of the public who are hanging on the line. So we'd like to make a motion to move that to the front of the design review agenda so that we can just continue it now and no one's staying on the line for the whole meeting waiting for the project to be continued. So would one of the commissioners like to move 3825 West 32nd to the front of the design review agenda?
I can do that.
Thanks, Anne.
Madam Chair, I move to move item number 2022-COA-007 3825 West 32nd Avenue to the front of the design review list.
Thank you, Anne. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Brad. All right, then I'll call for the vote. Brad,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
Kelly, aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote, and we'll go ahead and move that to the front of the design review agenda. Before we talk about that, I guess I should probably address the design review process that's up on the screen. So I'll go ahead and announce the item on the agenda that we're going to see, and staff will introduce the application and provide their recommendation. Then we'll invite the applicant to present. You'll have up to 10 minutes. And use as much or as little of that time as you'd like. After which we'll see if there are any public comments. And once we're done with public comments, we'll move into deliberation and make a motion and vote on the project. So that's the process. And since we just moved the last project up, let's go ahead and start with project number 2022-COA-007 at 3825 West 32nd Ave. And since we're moving to continue this, Jesse and Jen, do we just go ahead and do that now? We don't need to have any staff discussion? Okay. Great. So then we need to make another motion here. Would someone like to continue this to our next meeting, which is February 1st, next Tuesday? Is that correct, Jen?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, I can make a motion. I move to continue project number 2022-COA-007, 3825 West 32nd Avenue to Tuesday, February 1st, 2022.
Thank you, Brad. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you, Julie. All right, let's go ahead and vote. Brad,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
and Kelly, aye. All right, so unanimous vote and the motion passes. So if anyone is on the line regarding 3825 West 32nd Avenue, we will now be reviewing that next Tuesday. So take a look at next week, excuse me, next week's agenda to see where that falls. All right, so our next project up for design review today is 2022-COA-025 at 1572 Race Street. Abby, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. So up for review first is a proposal to replace the painted wood shingles that are covering the gable ends of the roof on the north, south, east, and west sides with a synthetic slate roofing. So 1572 Race Street, also known as the Raymond House, or as Castle Marne, was built in 1890 and was designated as a Denver landmark in 1974. It's prominently located at the intersection of Race Street and East 16th Avenue and was designed by well-known Denver architects William A. Lang and Marshall R. Pugh. So currently the gable ends are clad in a painted wood shingle. So here are a couple historic photos. So you see there the house circa 1890 when it was built, and then a house, sorry, that's totally that. I transposed the numbers there on the second one. That is supposed to be 1986. So big difference there. But just to show you through the years, you can't tell exactly what the material there is in the 1890 version. The image isn't quite clear enough, but it looks like it probably is wood shingle. The image from 1986 is very clear that you can tell that that is a wood shingle that is there in the gable end. So the applicant is proposing to use as a replacement EchoStar Majestic Slate roofing and a 12-inch tile with a beveled edge. So you see that there, that image of the new tile proposed. EchoStar tiles are a synthetic slate that are made out of recycled rubber and plastics. They're proposing to use a mix of 3 colors: smoke gray, federal gray, and a mountain plum. The windows and the fascia are to be trimmed with 10 or 12-inch traditional or rectangular roof tiles. So here just shows you the areas on each one of the facades where the new material is being proposed. Since this is a corner property, most of these areas do have a fairly high level of visibility. And then you see, there's just the comparison between the existing material and the proposed. So landmark guidelines support the use of alternative materials when the use of the original material is not feasible, and when the alternative material is a close match for the original. However, neither of these conditions apply in this case. Wood shingle wall cladding is readily available and often approved by Landmark as a replacement for deteriorated gable end shingles. Additionally, the synthetic tile proposed is replicating slate rather than wood. It does not match the scale, finish, character, material, composition, design, color, texture, or other visual qualities of the existing wood shingle. No documentation has been submitted to show that slate was ever used historically on this building. Historically, wood shingle is the most common cladding for similar gable end walls like this. So certainly in Denver, having wood shingles on a Victorian era building is very common. So there's nothing that leads me to believe that it may have been a different wood shingle than configuration than there now. But I think all the evidence would support that it was some sort of wood shingle that was originally on these gable ends. So here is a comparison submitted by the applicant of the dimensions. So based on the measurements shown by the applicant, the existing wood shingles have an exposure of roughly 6 inch wide by 5 inch tall. And the proposed synthetic slate tiles are much larger, with an exposure that will be 12 inches wide and 7 inches tall. And historically, the gable end shingles we have are definitely on the smaller side. So that 5 by 6 or a smaller size, even than that is what we would find typically. What they're proposing as a replacement is much larger than you would typically find for a gable end wood shingle. So largely the shingle is used as a wall surface material, but they are also used in some detail areas. So staff is particularly concerned with the ability of the large synthetic shingles that they are proposing to replicate the detail on these gable ends. So you can see there on the upper left, there are some curved wall elements to be replicated, as well as you can see some of the detail around the arched openings as well. So staff is recommending denial, particularly based on guideline 2.25C, which states, if replacement is necessary, use original materials whenever possible. The use of original materials is particularly critical for landmark structures. So this is an individual landmark, and a distinctive architectural feature would be significantly altered with the proposed change in material and design. The proposed imitation slate does not match the wood shingles in material, composition, design, color, texture, or other visual qualities, and could be seen to also be creating a false sense of history, since slate does not appear to be the original material used for these gable ends. That's it for me.
Oop, there's the unmute. Okay. All right. Are there any questions for staff? No. Okay. Can we get the applicant promoted?
Yeah, Emily is transitioning. We have 3 people with the same name, so they're all Justin Hubbard. And if if you are not Justin Hubbard and we have promoted you, please just keep yourself muted for the moment. Or if you're someone speaking on this project, you're welcome to unmute. But it looks like they're all over now.
Okay. So would the real Justin Hubbard unmute and go ahead and start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
Hello, this is actually the John Munson that entered in as Justin Hubbard, but it is John Munson. You said name and address, is that correct?
Yes.
Address would be 7245 West Gilpin in Denver.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So the in regards to the process when it comes to the approval on the product, so the main reason that the slate profile was chosen is due to the nature of the type of shake that is on the building now. So the type of shake that's actually on there is actually considered a taper sawn or a perfection shake shingle. It's a thinner style than a normal shake. So the reason that the slate was done because the texture of the physical wood shake that's on the property is a smooth texture, not a wood splits or a heavy split shake that is typical of other shake properties. So we were trying to replicate the smooth texture of the existing wood shake. Same with the thickness. There is a photo that was submitted. I don't think that you actually brought it up on your slideshow. But there is a photo that is labeled on our application IMG 1454. I don't know if you have that by chance available.
We can look through our packet. I don't know that ours are. Oh, what was it? IMG.
So it's on our application. It's page 10.
Uh-huh.
And the photo name is actually IMG _1454.
Yes, I think we do have it. I'm just flipping through the photos. So yeah.
No problem at all. So the reason I call your attention to that is to show the nominal thickness of the slate material in comparison to the existing taper sawn wood shingle, to show that it is smooth in texture as well as the thickness is replicating of what is there. The photos that were submitted that you have up on the screen is indicative of one particular slope or elevation, I should say, on the structure. All four elevations have different thicknesses and dimensions of it. So that photo there, if you look at the west facing and the east facing, those actually are a larger shake material versus the cedar shingle that's on there. So those are larger in scale that actually face east and west. The south and north are similar in nature to what was shown in the photo with the dimensions on it. It's just those areas were very difficult to make access to get dimension photos of them when we turned in the application. So the existing, so per your guys' design guide 2.13 development new design, it says the elements should relate to the comparable features in general size, shape, scale, and finish. We do believe that the slate material, while yes, it is called slate, it is more representation of the existing product on there being 3/8 of an inch thick, similar to what is actually on the building. It is a more sustainable product, so that longevity wise and maintenance wise, the homeowner isn't financially burdened to be able to keep upkeep on the property. The current color was painted onto the wood shingle. I'm sure most of you are aware you should not paint wood shake. Encapsulates moistures, increases rot, creates more of a decay issue in the future. It's one of the reasons the homeowner was looking to go to more of a synthetic long-term product. In more comparison into the richer sodium Romanesque style and look that's actually a larger percentage of the wall on each gable, each section, each elevation. Part of that characteristic is a contrasting colors, rock face stone. It's been described that the coloring of the stone on this particular property is a rusticated pink and gray color. So we're trying to duplicate that in the sense of color, texture, size, and finish, all they extended up onto the gable ends on each property, or each elevation, excuse me. Those are the general aspects of why that particular product was chosen to install on the property. Longevity, decreased maintenance, as well as similar size and nature of the existing product.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. This is Brad. I was just wondering, was there any research to indicate that this was ever a slate or any other material that you found in your research?
So the portions of the property that, because the LRC already approved the roof, the actual physical roof surface, and we replaced the roof. During the installation of the roof, we did come to find that a dormer on the south elevation, the picture you see there where the larger gable, to the right of it, there's a smaller dormer as well as additional shake and a window there. It's kind of hard to see in that photo, but we found actually 3 layers of the material behind it. It was not, again, slate, but it was similar in size and dimension to what we're proposing. And that was actually behind what you can see today on the outside edge, outside face.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Anne.
I have a question. Hi, this is Anne. Is there a technical reason that the wood could not be replaced with wood?
Technical reason? Could you expand just a little bit more when you specify technical?
There's not a code reason or anything having to do with the flammability or anything of the would that would preclude you actually replacing it with wood.
So as far as code wise, no. I know the neighboring structure to the south actually did catch fire. I think it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the structure has since been rebuilt. So there is a concern of the owner about putting a flammable product up on the house, given that the neighboring structure already caught fire. There was concern of this particular property being a landmark actually going up in flames. So it's one of the main deciding factors to get away from a flammable product. Code wise, there's no stipulation in Denver that says that it could not be wood shake. No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question, and that's how do you plan to address those details where there's like curves in the wall and when these synthetic slate shingles are 12 inches wide, it seems like that would be a real challenge.
Actually, no, that's one of the benefits of the product because, typical wood shake is a very rigid material. This product is a solid color all the way through, and we have the availability to make bends and turns. There are several historical properties actually in Denver, in Silver Plume, that has the same product on it that has a radius curve done to it. There are multiple properties that have turret type structures that are round and cone shaped that this product is installed. So it is more than capable to make a curved or radius installation. And part of our plan is, in regards to the windows, there's talk about Mr. Lang has this, idea when he does an arch structure around it, he stops it at the curve in regards to the color to mimic the setting sun, the way that I've researched and found. So that same detail would be replicated in the new install versus what, the 1890 as well as the 1986 photo. I even found one from the 70s where the house was painted a green and gray color, and they did not replicate the original design of having that setting sun type look arch around the windows. And that's something that the homeowner does want to put back.
So it's just field cut and bent?
As far as the radius concerned, yeah, it's actually back cut so that you're able to, get a relief in the product to be able to make that curve to it. And the curve is very gentle. It's not an aggressive, 90-degree turn by any means. It's a very gentle sloping curve. And that only actually happens on that south facing elevation where you have the curve around those lower cornices.
And My last question for you is, why was the beveled edge selected rather than a square traditional edge? Just looking at the photos, it looks like the edges aren't beveled of the existing.
Yeah, that's the homeowner, noticing the Victorian-esque neighborhood. He's elected to go with that design in regards to, I want to say blend in, but it is a very common repeating pattern on other properties around his particular property. The neighboring property has the wood shake synthetic cement product on it, but in a staggered pattern. So he was trying to, again, separate himself from, the neighboring property and then be more in line with the Victorian design, which Mr. Lang has actually done several designs in the Denver area with that same exact beveled look to it.
Thanks. Any other questions for the applicant? No? All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let's open this up for public comments. If anybody has a if anybody has a comment, please dial *9 if you're joining us by phone to raise your hand, or use the hand raise button in Zoom if you're joining us via computer.
Just so you know that we don't have anyone at the moment who's joined by phone. Everyone is joined by Zoom, and I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
All right. Any recap? Abby? Where are we? All right, we'll move into deliberation then. So we saw, Abby's assessment and the staff report highlighting the guidelines that are associated with this project. What was everyone's thoughts on that?
Kelly, I can start. I mean, I looked at guideline 2.25, and it seems that wood shakes are very readily available yet. So, based on that guideline, I agree with staff's assessment of this. I think that this is easy to replicate, and I think with some of the details that are existing there, that there's a lot of benefit to using the original type of material.
Thanks, Brad. I see some nodding heads. Gary, did you have something?
agree.
Yeah. I would too. I understand the applicant's desire to go with the synthetic product because we've seen other people come forward with that, especially when it's wood. And typically for roofs, that's an insurance issue. But this is very common for siding, and especially being in just these small accent areas and not the whole building. I think it makes sense to match the original, especially since that's what the guidelines state. Well, all right. So it seems pretty cut and dry that we're all on the same page. So who would like to make the motion?
I can make a motion.
Can I bring up an issue about color?
Yeah.
The applicant mentioned that painting shingles is not recommended. I understand why that might be true. I think relevant to this project, by denying this, which I agree with, is there any direction we would want to give the applicant regarding replacing the shingles with the appropriate sawn wood shingle, and whether or not painting them any given color is appropriate, or whether leaving them in their natural color would be acceptable? Again, based on whatever historic evidence there might have been, whether the shingles were originally in the first place. Do we want to kind of help the applicant address that issue?
I think that's a really good point, Gary. And
To clarify one thing, we don't regulate color, but we do ask that when people are replacing wood shingles with wood shingles, that they at least do a clear coat varnish just to protect them from weathering.
so then we don't really have to give input on that to help direct the applicant because that's really up to them.
Yeah, they can do whatever color they want, but it sounds like Gary was concerned about well, yeah, yes, we don't regulate color, but we do ask that people put a clear coat on at least to protect the wood shingles from severe weathering.
But
It's a preservative, isn't it? It's not a varnish.
No, it's a non-pigmented varnish.
Okay,
So yes, a preservative, but it's applied as opposed to embedded in the
Right.
material. And if someone wanted to put, pigmented varnish, that's fine too.
sure, just something to protect them. Gary, does that kind of addresses your comment then, right?
yeah, I think it does. I think it does. I mean, I think what I was actually advocating for was the guidance that just because the shingles are painted now does not necessarily mean they have to be painted in the replacement program.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I see a lot of nodding heads. So I think, is everyone in agreement with that there would be flexibility to the applicant that they wouldn't necessarily have to paint it, but they could also just, as Jen mentioned, do a clear coat preservative treatment? Okay. All right.
The main reason that I turned my camera on was because Erica has joined us, so you can add her to the vote.
Yes, I did see that. I did not mention it, but glad your internet is back up, Erica. All right, great. Well, I think, Brad, you were about to make a motion. Would you like to move forward with that?
Yes, I will. I move to deny application number 2022-COA-025 for the replacement of wood shingles at 1572 Race Street as per design guidelines 2.4, 2.10, 2.12, 2.25, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Brad. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Gary. All right, I will call for the vote. Brad,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Erica,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
Kelly, aye. All right, so it's a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the next project up for design review is 2022-COA-021 at 701 North Oneida.
Thanks. So the applicant is proposing to install 19 solar panels to the roof of 701 North Oneida Street in the Montclair Historic District. The property is located at the corner of 7th and Oneida, and the structure is non-contributing to the district. It was constructed in 1954 and had a large second floor addition that was added sometime between 2007 and 2011. 10 of the proposed panels are shown to be located on the front street facing roof slope, which would be highly visible, as you can see here on the right with the photo. So here's the proposed layout the applicant has submitted. The design guidelines call for changes to non-contributing buildings to conform to prevailing patterns within the historic district to maintain the historic context. Our design guidelines state specifically that guidelines for new construction also apply to projects involving an existing non-contributing structure in a historic district. The goal is to ensure that a non-contributing structure continues to fit within the overall guidelines for new construction, meaning that it does not adversely affect the character defining features of the overall historic district. This proposed layout does not meet design guidelines 2.33 or 4.32. The proposed placement of those specific 10 solar panels at the front facade roof slope does not conform with placement of panels on historic structures in the neighborhood. And being located on that primary front facing roof slope will be highly visible from the street. The 10 panels on that front roof slope also are not located in that rear 2/3 of the structure in an unobtrusive location and will not minimize potential adverse impacts on the character of the district. So the applicant has submitted the following information and stated that moving the panels to meet our design guidelines would be detrimental to the amount of power the applicant can gain with the proposed configuration. If they change that configuration to meet the design guidelines, they've stated that the energy savings change from 93% to 73%. So therefore, the applicant is requesting an exception to our guidelines. Historic Montclair Community Association, Inc. also submitted comments yesterday, which we forwarded to the commission, stating they felt the applicants should meet our design guidelines. As I stated, the proposed layout does not meet the guidelines 2.33 or 4.32. So therefore, staff is recommending denial. That's it.
Thanks, Crystal. Are there any questions for staff? No. All right, let's hear from the applicant then. Okay, you can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready. Please start with your name and address for the record. And we can't hear you, so you may want to try clicking the mute button again or unmute.
Oh, I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kiera Thomas. I am reaching out in regards to the resident, Michelle Sayward, who resides at 701 Oneida Street. The reason being that we are requesting an exception for this particular customer mainly has to do with the trees that are growing in the customer's neighbor's yard. So you can see to the right of the screen, the design showing the panels, to the left of the screen is the design that the HOA is proposing. When we take that into consideration with the offset of the trees, especially during the summertime when production is going to be the best, the customer loses a significant amount of that offset due to something he has no control over. In order for us to even be able to get 93% offset, we would have to move the panels to the front of the home. However, we definitely want to get an exception if we can, but we understand if that is not allowed. There's not much to it other than we just need an exception. If not, we can put them on the back. The only thing that affects us is the production of the panels. As far as the structure of the roof, we are able to install them. There's nothing compromising the structure. One might ask, let me know if you can't see my mouse. One might ask why we cannot install on this structure, and that is just because that is a patio roof and it doesn't have the needed support in order for us to install the solar panels. That's basically all that I have as far as presentation goes. So sorry, not much, but just whatever we can do to get the offset that the customer wants, we would love to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, we couldn't see your pointer because I think our staff is controlling the PowerPoint, but
Yeah,
I think we know
I think
what you're talking about.
Okay, perfect.
Is it this area? Oops, sorry, Crystal and I are both trying to do it. I'll let you do it, Crystal.
Not that area, but if you go just a little bit further down.
Here.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. Are there any questions for the applicant? Yeah, Anne.
I guess I would ask the question, how much reinforcing needs to be done on the patio roof in order to allow panels to be mounted on it?
Yes, that is a good question. So according to our structural engineers, we never install on patios, given that they don't have an attic space. So probably a bunch.
And you mentioned that the trees that are making that, west side less desirable to install panels on, that those are neighbors' trees. So I'm a little confused by that, because isn't it mostly the trees directly south of the house, and the ones immediate to the west are still on this lot, right? Because that's the garage at the back.
Correct. So the drawing is a little confusing. I had the same questions when I met with our design team as well. So the front trees, we actually were able to kind of put the green circle around which trees are casting the most shade. It would make sense that the trees on the side, or sorry, it would, since the customer's on a corner, it's not the front, but on that bottom side of the home, those trees would cast a lot of shadows. Yes, exactly where you're pointing. So if you go right up to that roof section, the first one directly above those south trees. So this roof section actually, in order to stay within fire code with the city, we cannot put panels there. I think we would be able to fit a max of one panel, which we aren't. We typically try to stay away from one panel arrays just because of the amount of conduit that would be on the customer's roof. So these rear trees, it's hard to tell in the photo, but this tree, sorry, I wish I had the cursor. Yes, that tree that you are on right now, that one is actually casting a lot more shade than it looks like in the picture. However, we didn't want to obstruct the view of the patio. So these two trees, this imagery that we have right here was actually taken about 2008. So given that it's about a little over 10 years later, we have to take into consideration that those trees have grown considerably and have not been trimmed or maintained.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you for your time. All right, is there anyone here who would like to make a comment on this project?
Hand raised. Let me just get my timer right. So Marika, I've got you first, and you're welcome to unmute whenever you're ready.
Please start with your name and address. You have up to 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Marika Buhlman. I live at 147 West First Avenue, and I'm not here specifically to comment on this property, but it does raise a few questions for me. I was wondering if you guys could fill me in. What are the new rules regarding solar panels that you have discussed, and are they in effect now? Because I believe Landmark has been meeting. And would it affect this project? So that's one question. And then, are there certain panels which are more acceptable than others that you would consider? That would increase the chance of an applicant getting their solar panels on. The next question is, did solar panels exist when the neighborhood went under landmark review? And is a consideration the sustainability of the future and the kind of environment a consideration that you would take into account when making a decision regarding the application? And then the last one is, what kind of leeway do you have in making a decision if the guidelines suggest that it's not acceptable? Do you have any leeway, or to what extent do you have leeway to accept this? And the very last thing would be, I'd like to voice my support. I generally think that the environment is pretty critical, and that when we make design decisions for our historic neighborhoods, while we want to maintain character, we also want to really highlight the importance of the environment and our futures and sustainability. So I do support this as a person.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Yep. Let's see. So Sarah is next. You are welcome to unmute whenever you're ready, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Cinderhoff. I currently live at 2290 Glencoe Street and building over in the Baker neighborhood. So just wanted to comment that I am in support of the solar panels on this project. Like the last speaker spoke about, I think we do need to really take a look at the environment at this time right now. And just curious, as the board, when Governor Polis signed in House Bill 21-1229 July of this past year, talking about decreasing solar that you're not allowed to decrease solar by more than 10%. in these in these different neighborhoods. Just wondering how Landmark has, taken that into consideration, because I think that with the current guidelines in this particular project on Oneida, it would limit it by more than 10% by the efficiency in there. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I don't see any other hands raised, no.
All right. Before we move into deliberation, is there any recap? Guessing not. Crystal, okay.
Can I clarify where we are with the guideline update?
Yeah,
Just
I was
that-
gonna go through all of those once we started deliberation. So yeah, the first question was, what are the new rules for solar panels and will this one be held to those?
Yeah, so
go ahead.
So the design guidelines are in the process of being updated. We had a community meeting to talk about what those guidelines potentially could look like and what flexibility could be added into the current guidelines, but we don't have any guidelines that are ready for adoption yet. So presume it would be sometime this year. We're probably eyeing kind of late the second quarter of this year, but it's forthcoming, and because we don't have any community feedback on any drafts yet, because the drafts haven't been written yet, then we don't have anything to say, oh, this doesn't meet, but it will meet in the future, kind of thing. So the current guidelines are the current guidelines, and that's what the commission needs to review this based on.
Thanks. And before we start deliberating, let's go ahead and go through the rest of those questions that were brought up in the public comments, just to address those. So that was the first question. So no, there haven't been any changes to the solar panel guidelines yet. So this will not impact our review. Are there certain panels you'd consider over others, like certain products over others? And in my experience, yeah, we haven't favored certain manufacturers over others. It's as long as they meet our guidelines so that they're tight to the roof. They're not, up on those, I'm going to use the wrong terminology, but they're not up on stands on, kickers at some weird angle. They're tight to the roof. They're not reflective materials, that kind of stuff. So no, we don't favor certain ones. And we have reviewed the Tesla tiles, like solar panel roof, like roofing material, and we have approved that for some buildings too. So yeah, open to multiple options. Were solar panels in existence when this district was landmarked? I don't know when this district was landmarked off the top of
the 70s. So, but that said, the existing design guidelines were adopted. The solar section, I don't think changed at all between 2014 and 2016. So the current guidelines for solar were established in 2014 or adopted by the LPC in 2014, and solar panels were in existence at that time.
Mm-hmm. Which is why we have guidelines specifically geared towards them. And, another question you asked was, do we consider sustainability and support that in our historic districts? And we do. So that's why there is a section in the guidelines addressing that. So yes, I think that overall we do encourage to make our buildings more sustainable, just to do it in a way that doesn't negatively impact the historic character of the district or structure. And then the last question I think that Marika had was, what leeway does the commission have to go, and I'm paraphrasing all of these because I was trying to write down feverishly. What leeway does the commission have to go against guidelines? So if the guidelines say one thing, does the commission have the option to go rule in a different way? And Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, or Adam, but we are here to enforce the guidelines. If there's a unique or circumstance on a property, which we do see sometimes, like a unique kind of consideration, then we do have leeway there. But if it's, I'm trying to think of an example of a unique instance in this case, and it's not coming to mind, but if there's something very unique about the specific structure property that makes it so that, like, say it's in the front third, but it's not very visible from the public right of way or something, we might say, oh, well, that's very different because normally we're assuming that the front third of the roof is very visible. And in this case, it's not. Then maybe we would approve it, something like that. It's just a for instance. Jen or Adam, did I misrepresent anything there?
Like to see if Adam's going to unmute, but the commission has had flexibility on solar panels in the past when based on visibility, as you said. So sometimes like the front, something in the back edge of the front third might be more applicable, but it's not my experience that the commission has said anything in the front third as at the front that's highly visible meets the guidelines.
Gary, did you have something to add there?
Well, if we're finished addressing those questions, I think I wanted to understand the applicability of the Colorado law that the speaker referred to. As I understand it, that law restricts HOAs from restricting a homeowner in an HOA district from installing solar panels under certain conditions. And it would not apply to the Landmark Commission. And I just want to verify with Adam that that is the correct understanding.
We would have to look at that state law, take it under advisement. I don't want to give any sort of opinion in a public forum without having read that and looked at it.
So if we were to deny this application and it later turns out to be in conflict with state law, what happens?
Again, we'd have to look at it. The state law may not apply due to home rule status. I don't want to opine right now on that law.
Okay.
And the other thing is that, when the design guidelines are updated, hopefully in the late second quarter of this year for solar, they can always come back to propose additional panels that would be meeting those guidelines, which we could do administratively once those guidelines are adopted.
That's a good point. All right. Thanks, Jen and Adam, for the additional comments there, and Gary for bringing up the comment that Sarah had made. That was the last one, I think, from our public comments, the last question. So with that, let's move into deliberation. We've heard an analysis of, how it compares to the guidelines. What were your thoughts?
I'll go ahead and jump in. I agree with the staff assessment. I think this clearly doesn't meet our existing guidelines. So I would be in favor of denying the application right now. I understand the desire to maximize the solar capabilities. And I think in the past, Graham has made some good suggestions of kind of alluding back to what you were talking about, Kelly, if and when the guidelines change that might allow further collectors on such a house like this, that the applicant could install the necessary conduit at this time to allow them to more easily and readily install those additional collectors if the guidelines kind of allow that. So I would just put that as a friendly suggestion, but I would be in favor of denying the application as it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't want to take credit for that. That was Jen who pointed that out, but but thank you. And I would just like to say, you know, we can't guarantee that the guidelines will be changing one way or another. So that would be up to the applicant's discretion if they want to, you know, bet on that and pay for that infrastructure at this time. Any other thoughts on this, Gary?
Well, you know, and I agree with the staff's recommendation as well. You know, I think that if the HOA's proposed plan had been proposed, we would probably be recommending approval. And it seems to me that the justification for the customer's proposed plan versus the HOA proposed plan has to do with the shading that occurs because of trees. And trees will change. And at some point in the future, the HOA's proposed plan might actually be more efficient. And the customer's proposed plan might be less efficient than the calculations that were made when the calculations were made. So because of the variability that vegetation creates, I don't see why we should make the exception, given the fact that there is an acceptable plan that at the moment may not be as efficient as the homeowner's proposed plan, but that could change in the future.
Yeah, I agree, Gary, and I see some other nodding heads as well. But I do think, you know, I feel for the applicant because I think, and I don't want to speak for other commissioners, but I am fairly confident that most of us are very supportive of sustainability efforts and improving the energy efficiency of our homes. So I support what the applicant is trying to do, but it's just unfortunately just doesn't meet the guidelines as they're currently adopted. So I would support staff's recommendation for that reason. And oh, I had one other thing to say and it just went out of my brain right now. I do think what's interesting about this property is that it's not contributing. And so it did actually, I did do a double take on this because it is non-contributing. And I guess I didn't realize, maybe I should have, I didn't realize until this project that those guidelines are, you know, for all buildings within a district, not just contributing buildings. And it makes sense. I think that the proposed plan would be very, very visible from the street and so it would be very noticeable. So I am supportive of the staff recommendations, but I would be interested to hear what the community has to say as we're gathering input for guideline updates and how they apply to non-contributing buildings.
I know we've recently, like in the last year, have reviewed a few non-contributing buildings with solar panels, I believe, and kind of, again, looked at them in the same way of the guidelines. So,
yeah. I remember an infill one that we reviewed as well, but I don't know. I did do a double take. Just thinking about that. All right. Any other comments on this?
Well, I'd like to add that, and this may apply more to how we consider changing the guidelines, but the aesthetics of the distribution of panels on a roof, I think, is also a factor that, you know, if in order to get maximum efficiency, whatever that is, there are a few here and a few there and a few someplace else that results in a more cluttered appearance. I think that's a factor for denial or conditional approval as well. Whereas if the panels are assembled in a geometric pleasing way that are less obtrusive. I think that would be a condition where the installation would be more acceptable. And I think that's, again, something that the proposed plan has over the HOA proposed plan has over the customer's proposed plan, and that it's a simpler installation. The panels are clustered together better. They're not scattered all over the roof. I think those are kind of considerations that for future direction in how the guidelines evolve and how they get administered might be a factor.
Yeah. All right, it sounds like everyone's in agreement. Who would like to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
I
move to deny application number 2022-COA-021 for the installation of solar panels at 701 North Oneida Street as per design guidelines 4.32 and 2.33, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks, Gary.
I'll second.
Thank you, Erica, for seconding. All right, I will call for the vote. Brad,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Erica,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
Kelly, aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the project is denied. And we'll see back, hopefully, if you can come up with an alternative solution. So the next project up for design review is 2022-COA-026 at 331 University Avenue.
Okay, thanks. This is a mass form and context review for a single family infill residence in the Country Club Historic District. So the commission previously conditionally, The commission has previously conditionally approved the demolition of the existing structures that is located on this site, but has denied 2 previous mass form and context applications for a replacement structure. So just for reference, I included here on the left the previous design, just kind of to refresh your memory of what you had looked at previously for this site compared to what is being proposed today. So the denials issued by the commission previously were based on the determination that the proposed design did not show sufficient connection to the country club district. Specifically, the proposed flat roofed form was a concern that it did not relate to the district. The country club design guidelines specifically call out pitched roofs as a key feature of the district. The design review goals of the country club district state: maintain the variety of architectural styles and the tradition of architectural excellence. New construction in the district should maintain the variety of architectural styles and types of detail found in the district, while reinforcing the common architectural characteristics, including masonry materials, simple volumetric forms, pitched roofs, and textured roofing materials. New designs that reinterpret these traditional elements in creative ways are encouraged. Since the last commission meeting, the applicant has restudied the design and done extensive kind of study within the country club district for inspiration and design precedents. The applicant has chosen to use the Tudor Revival style as the inspiration for the proposed infill, creating a contemporary interpretation of the style. Characteristic Tudor Revival features incorporated into the proposed design include a steeply pitched cross-gabled roof, street-facing cat slide roof, tall and narrow grouped windows, and a projecting sidewall. Staff finds that the proposed design is a successful modern interpretation of the Tudor Revival form that meets the design review goals of the country club district, that recommends new designs that reinterpret traditional elements in creative ways. So for reference, here is the streetscape. So you can see photograph on the top, the existing house that's been conditionally approved for demo is the second from the left. And then you see below the drawing, showing how the new infill will fit into the street. So this is located on the eastern boundary of the Country Club Historic District. So it's a somewhat atypical setting, and that, it's really on the edge and faces onto, a street that, the opposite side of the street is not in the district. So this is on edge of the district. You can see here the staff finds that the new infill does relate to the adjacent properties. The foundation height and overall height fit within the district patterns. The facade fenestration is balanced. This portion of the district doesn't really have a very strong, street, there's kind of a variety of building forms on this section of the block. So there's not really, one strong design to relate to, but staff feels the overall massing and scale fits, proportionally with the adjacent structures. So here is a compatibility demonstration. So the infill features a steeply pitched roof form combined with secondary flat roof forms. So you can see here kind of key feature of other Tudor or English cottage style buildings that are being referenced is kind of having that front facing gable feature, which is the strong design form on the proposed infill. The application is not proposing to have a porch, but as you'll see here, typically you often do not find porches on Tudor Revival or English cottage examples in Denver. More typical is just having a front stoop. So instead of the porch, the residence features a simple front stoop, which will be enclosed by a low wall. So here is the site plan and the roof plan. So the infill is located on a smaller lot than is typical for the Country Club District. This will have a greater lot coverage. So the lot coverage will be just over 33%. Historically, 20 to 30% is common, but it's still maintaining a side yard. So staff feels working with the lot size that still is close to the traditional district proportions. The design will feature a single long roof ridge with an intersecting cross gable. The Country Club guidelines do not encourage the use of long roof ridges, but we feel in this case, since the roof ridge is located perpendicular to the street, the length of the roof ridge will not be readily apparent. The primary roof form will be a steeply pitched cross gable roof. This roof form is characteristic of the Tudor Revival style. And then you can see there's going to be two secondary flat roofs that will connect to the side gable. So here you see the facade and the rear of the structure. So you can see that the entry faces the street and will be readily visible. The design doesn't include a front porch, but will have a low wall. You also see the kind of characteristic Tudor English cottage side wall there. So the facade features tall, narrow grouped windows, which reference the fenestration patterns found on Tudor Revival residences. Windows are balanced, and the facade features a traditional solid to void ratio. Here are the side elevations. So you can see there the prominent side gable. To the south, the north side has a less typical fenestration pattern, but there will be minimal visibility for this side of the house. This is the side that will be closer to the adjacent structure. It's the side with the projecting cross gable that'll be kind of the open side yard. Here's the garage at the rear. So the garage, flat roof located on the alley, which follows traditional forms. It's subordinate to the primary structure. It does feature an attached carport, which is somewhat a characteristic of the district, not a typical historic feature. But this feature, since it's located at the alley, will not be readily visible. So Finally, in summary, staff is recommending approval of the mass form and context application, finding that the infill is a contemporary interpretation of a style, the Tudor revival found historically in the district. Design references historic forms and massing while being clearly identifiable as new construction. So this application is just for the mass form and context. Materials, window and door details, design details, and site work would be reviewed in the future during a design detail review.
Thank you, Abby. Are there any questions for staff? No. All right. Let's hear from the applicant then. You can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready. Please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
I have a video drive-by, so let me share that. Let's see. Let me know when you guys want me to hit play on that, or if you, whenever you're ready.
Am I in?
Yep.
Hear me? Cool. This is Nick Young. I own Mod and we like to design things. My address is 2060 Hoyt Street. Abby, I thought you did a great presentation. Thank you for that. I actually got more meetings after this if you want to help out. But yeah, let's hit this video because I think it does a good job. That 2D is a bit difficult to convey certain aspects, in particularly on this southeast side. So it's a short, like 10-20 second video, but I think it conveys a lot of the fun approaches and perspectives for the new design. South is to the left if you're looking at the front facade. So we're attempting to locate some trees and so forth so we can kind of break down that facade. To pick up kind of what Abby might not have touched on or take a bit further, I'd presume moving forward, I think we learned a lot from our two previous submittals. So we attempted to take a lot of those cues from the neighborhood into this design, and yet we still, I believe, we're pushing the envelope in the interpretation of this Tudor revival style in regards to the porch element while still being respectful relative to our compatibility study. And then you will see this more flat roof portion there in the top left of the image on the screen. However, we're breaking that down with the long, narrow, repetitious windows that's common throughout the Tudor style and other styles in the neighborhood as well. As you move around I think the south elevation, if we could go to, I think we had an elevation page in 2D. The south elevation is nice and broken down, but you can see that flat roof is extruded through functionally. What the flat roof is allowing us to do is to get some nice space up there relative to the bulk planes as well in the kids' bedrooms. Yeah, that one probably, or the next one below it. Thank you. We did have we broke up the ridge line originally on that north elevation, but Abby and the staff's recommendations, I think, did make it a bit more holistic with this extruded roof all the way to the rear. And then we tied that east and west elevation together with that similar pitch and then the swooping roof detail. I think as we get through construction documents, some of these windows on the north might get a little cleaned up once we verify soffits and so forth with HVAC and exact kitchen layouts. And that being said, I could see us getting more in the direction of this clean, tall, narrow, repetitious, similar in nature, such as if we're looking at those three windows on the left of the north elevation, I think we could very easily clean that up and maybe have a similar spacing in between those windows as we did on the front facade. In regards to the garage, we explored some pitched roofs, but it's very difficult with the allowable building height and the bulk plane to fit a functional 3-car garage. Let's even take the carport out of the conversation for now. So we left this flat roof, but we do intend to pull the same brick materials into that garage. And we also stole a few details or continue to utilize the details from our initial studies of the first design in regards to the front fence of the property, the location of that, and the kind of that promenade of coming on axis with that front facade from the primary street, as you'll see. Yeah, that's a great image there. On the right, so you can see you're on axis, which is indicative of a lot of the Tudor homes we found in our compatibility studies. And then you will see more detailed, and I know maybe this isn't our next landmark if this one goes well, in regards to the datums created by those brick lines as we work around the building. There on the left, you can kind of see it in this image, but if you guys go back and watch the 3D on your own time, you'll kind of see that. Other than that, I think we're going in the right direction, and we're anxious to get your guys' feedback.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? No questions. Well, the application materials did everything for you. It was great seeing the video too, the fly through.
Thank you.
All right, if there aren't any questions for the applicant, let's see if there are any public comments. If you'd like to comment on this project, please dial *9 if you're joining us by phone, or use the hand raise button.
Hands raised. We did have a few people join as Nick and a few people join as Roxanne, so I'm not sure if any of those are public commenters, and if you are, just use the hand raise button at the bottom of your screen. Okay.
I believe I'm 2 Nicks. I'm on my computer and phone.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. We don't have any public comment then.
Okay, then let's go ahead and move into deliberation then. All right. How did everyone think this met the guidelines?
I can start, Kelly.
Great.
You know, I was just looking through these, and I noticed this over the weekend when I was studying it, but I missed the last presentation. So I was going back and remembering when we first saw the project, but I think they've done a really nice job of taking the context of the neighborhood and kind of reinterpreting it and reinventing it. So it's nice, and a lot of the spaces kind of around the outside of the building too. You can see a lot of opportunity there. I do agree that there's probably some more studies that could happen on the north side of the property, because everything else feels really nicely proportioned. You can tell there's been a lot of thought put into it, and I think that north side just needs a little bit more detail work. But I agree with the staff's assessments. I think they've done a really nice job, and I think this is a fun little house, and I think it fits really nicely in the block when you look at the kind of the overall.
Yeah, and Brad, actually, I was out the last time this was reviewed too, so I was doing the same as you. I was kind of thinking back to the first time that they came, and I think this is a huge improvement and looks very compatible with the district, and definitely a modern interpretation, which I think is refreshing. So yeah, I'd applaud the applicant for that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Julie. I agree. I have been at all of those presentations. And I'm just really delighted to see this. I love how it's creative. It's not, I mean, it's an interpretation, but it's a modern interpretation. It's not, you know, trying to imitate anything in the neighborhood just to be reminiscent of, that's the word. But I will support staff's recommendation.
Yeah, I did want to thank staff and the applicants for working together and over so many iterations. I think this has really come together nicely now, and I know it's taken a lot of work on all of your parts. So thank you to all of you for that effort. I agree that I think this is a much more successful, not even trying to compare it to previous iterations, but a successful interpretation of existing architectural styles, but in the new, within the country club district, but within new construction, kind of contemporary lens. And this is not really here nor there, but I just can't resist mentioning that I definitely feel there's some postmodernist references here that we've seen in Country Club. And of course, that's not part of its period of significance, but in that way, it also feels like it fits right in with Country Club, but not in a way that's, we've seen some of those postmodernist houses either be considered non-contributing, or I'm not trying to suggest that per se, that it's inappropriate. I guess I'm just saying I can see how postmodernism has been part of the Country Club history, more recent history, and I feel like that it's just great to see how this kind of fits within that history as well. So congratulations, and I fully support this application.
All right. Sounds like most are in agreement with the staff report. If there aren't any, yeah, Anne.
I'm really happy. First of all, I think this is a very successful iteration of this project. And I was very happy to hear Erica talk about postmodernism, because I can see nods to that in this project and also in that neighborhood. So I really just congratulate the applicant for sticking with it. And I think it's very successful. I will just say that I know that we're in mass form and context, but I am looking at these drawings and kind of interested in how the cut brickwork is going to work out on those swooping forms and on the circular forms. This is just a friendly comment to say that that swoop is so elegant and lovely, and it will be interesting to see how that swoop intersects with the modularity of masonry and how the applicant manages to resolve that. But I think it's a great project and meets the guidelines.
All right. Well, oh, Gary, you've got something too.
I think I want to react to the implication that we are expecting a masonry exterior, unless we are. So maybe we need to talk about that a little bit, so that when the application comes back with detail, that we're not surprised.
Well, the current application does show it as brick. So I think that's why everybody's mentioning masonry.
Okay.
But obviously we're not reviewing materiality
Right.
at this time. So yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be brick, but they do show that they're planning for it to be primarily brick and then vertical wood siding.
And I think Anne's comments are very, that if it is masonry, the detailing of the masonry will be very important as to how the window sills, window heads, things line up, that sort. Thanks.
Definitely. Yeah, good comments. And there are plenty of historic examples of how that's addressed as well. So, all right, if we're all on the same page, then who's going to make the motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion.
Great, thanks, Julie.
I move to approve application 2022-COA-026 for the mass form and context of new infill at 331 University Boulevard as per Country Club Design Guidelines B1, B3, B4, D1 through D4, F1, F3, 4.2 through 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.18 and 4.19, character defining features for the Country Club Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Julie. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thanks, Brad. All right, let me call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
Kelly, aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the project is approved and we will see you back for design details. All right, the next project on our agenda today is 2022-COA-029, which is Red Rocks. Brittany.
So this is for the phase 2 design details for the replacement plan for the historic South Pedestrian Bridge that connects the triangle lot, which you can see in this photo here, with the amphitheater, and it goes around Shiprock and connects with the bottom of the amphitheater, which is just north of the site that we're discussing. So here you can see the proposed site, and let me get this slide to change. So this is the existing structure. The commission has reviewed this for demolition several times, but it was eventually approved for demolition on February 16th, 2021 by the commission, as it has some life safety issues relating to its current construction and age that the structure is. So the commission did also at the February 16th meeting review the phase 1 mass form and context submittal for the replacement of this structure, and unanimously approved the mass form and context. So the upper photos show the structure as it was prior to some shoring that was done to the structure. So in October of 2019, the commission reviewed temporary shoring for the structure that was to be in place for 3 years. So that is about to expire, but that temporary shoring you can kind of see in that lower right photo. There is an I-beam under the upper bridge, and then there's also a vertical pole from the pier up into that round corner to support the round corner of the upper structure, as it has a lot of deflection on that upper corner there. So this is the existing structure. You can see that the lower bridge has a concrete pier. Just like the upper structure, it is an I-beam structure with a metal handrail and a concrete deck. And then the upper structure is supported by a very thin steel pier, and is also a I-beam structure with a concrete deck. The railing that you see on this structure is not the historic railing. It does match a lot of the railing design out at Red Rocks, but is not original to this ramp. So here is the proposed replacement plan. So the applicant has kept several of the character defining features of the original design, including a curvilinear trail and the alignment, the use of a pier support on the upper and lower structure, which you can see here, natural stone for the retaining wall faces, smooth concrete finishes, a similar vertical grade. So they did not change the grade of the structure to meet ADA compliance. So it will not be ADA compliant, but Red Rocks does have other ADA entrances. So this does not necessarily need to be ADA requirements, but it does allow it to maintain those proportions that are more similar to the historic structure. And then as they are changing the upper bridge pier, it will be going from steel to concrete, and that is to provide better life safety and maintenance for this bridge. They have scaled that pier proportionately to the original design and with the new elements. So those elements have remained similar and preserved in this design. They have widened the deck a little bit of this structure, but it does remain 12 inches to align with the existing trails. And the original handrail design from the original drawings of this bridge will be restored as part of this phase 2 submittal, which you can see here in this rendering of this elevation drawing of the proposed replacement. So the applicant has conducted extensive outreach to discuss this replacement plan with the preservation partners that include Colorado Preservation Inc., Friends of Red Rocks, History Colorado, Historic Denver, the National Park Service, as Red Rocks is a National Historic Landmark, and the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. So this is the proposed replacement. So the lower bridge will still have a concrete pier, and then the upper bridge will have that pier replaced with a concrete pier as well, that the commission already approved the massing, scale, and placement on. So now we're just looking at those design details of that proposed bridge. The bridge will also have a steel fascia plate added to it to replicate the appearance of the original steel bridge, and mixed materials that are used on this structure. And then the metal handrail will be painted that Red Rocks pink color, which is known as boulder. So it will be that typical Red Rocks boulder color. The proposal is also proposing to use red sandstone retaining walls similar to the walls that are out there now, and also gutters for the trail system. And the trail system will be concrete. So here are some details on that proposed rail replacement. This is just a pipe rail design. It is based on the original drawings for the bridge, so they're not replicating the current handrail, which is a little more elaborate with some horizontal and vertical elements. This will just be a simple horizontal pipe rail. It will meet code compliance, so it's not an exact replica of the original rail, as the original rail had too much spacing in it, but it is based off the original rail design, which you can see there. And then I have some more details of that. So it will be slightly curved, as you can see in this section, through the bridge, and you can see how the bridge will be constructed. And again, this is just kind of replicating those original proportions of the structure. Again, that pier is going to be concrete, and it's going to have a concrete decking. And again, this is all for life safety reasons, but there will be a steel fascia on the outside edge to replicate that steel fascia and original I-beam construction of the bridges. Here's some more details on the handrail design. Again, just a pipe railing. There will be some conduit running through the railing system, and that is to provide illumination for light fixtures that will be on the back side of the bridge. I do have a detail of them. They're on the next slide. I thought I put them on this way, but I guess not. So this is the proposed retaining wall. Currently, the lower bridge is supported by a retaining wall, so the applicant is going to replicate that design, and they will face the concrete with the sandstone to match the current design. And then they will also be using that sandstone to form the gutters. And this is typical of the gutters that you see out at Red Rocks, that are those sandstone gutters. So they will be replicating that appearance there. So in terms of the light fixtures, they're going to be on the back side of the bridge, and they're going to provide illumination for shiprock. Our guidelines do talk about mostly using downlighting. However, the guidelines also talk about using lighting that is appropriate to the scale and a context of the site. And since Red Rocks is a monumental site, and it will just be illuminating the rock faces, staff felt that these were appropriate to use in this particular instance, because Red Rocks is a special kind of situation, and it's not illuminating a building facade, it's illuminating the rocks, which really define Red Rocks. So specifically, it will be illuminating shiprock. And again, that conduit will be ran through the handrails in the bridge structure itself, and you won't really see those light fixtures, as they'll be on the backside of the bridge. So in terms of materials, I have the material samples here. So the applicant is proposing to use a stained concrete, and the primary color will be the concrete stain 30109, and that will be for the lower bridge pier and for the majority of the upper bridge pier. Currently, the steel pier has a base that the applicant will be replicating in the revised design. And they will be staining that pier base a little bit a richer, darker color, which is that concrete stain 10076 that you see in the middle of the screen. That steel fascia is going to be a kind of brown, kind of desert color as it's described. And you can see a sample of that here on this page, so that it's not going to be curved like shown in this image, but it is going to be that color that you see here on this image. And then the handrail color is that bolder color that is used throughout Red Rocks. So you can see that paint sample there. And then you can see the retaining wall, which is the red sandstone. So presently the bridge is made up of these mixed materials, and the applicant will just be preserving that mixed materials. They're only proposing a few materials and that are contextual with the Red Rocks Amphitheater and Park, and are all high quality materials. So here you can see the samples out in the field. So you can see that metal sample adjacent to the existing pier, and that is really where they determine what color they would be using for that steel fascia on the bridge is based on that pier color in its natural state without the paint on it. What has been painted over the years, which you can see at the bottom, some of that remaining paint. And that paint is again that color that is used throughout Red Rocks. And then you can see the adjacent to the sandstone and handrails and other elements out in the park. So that's what the steel plate will look like. So here is a proposed rendering of the bridge. So again, you have those concrete piers that will have that red stain. You have that metal handrail that is painted that bolder color, and then that steel fascia plate on the bridge, which is that kind of mocha-ish color, which is really described as a desert color. Staff are recommending approval of this project. We feel that the new bridge will incorporate key character defining features of the bridge and materials, and the material construction will be compatible with the original material construction, but also the surrounding historic context. The bridge is an architectural feature of Red Rocks, and while some adjustments have been made to the materials, for example, swapping out the upper pier from steel to concrete, this is really for life safety reasons, and the applicant has done their best to ensure that the design comes as closely as possible to the original design, while also maintaining that life safety and replicating those proportions that you see originally in the bridge. So the design aesthetic is very similar to the original bridge. However, it's not creating a false sense of history by exactly replicating the bridge. So we are recommending approval of the design details, as we do feel that they are appropriate for this project. And I just have one more rendering showing the bridge. So this is kind of from the triangle lot. So the underside of the bridge will be a kind of grayish concrete color, and that is also intended to replicate the current color of the bridge. And then in this rendering here, you can see those red sandstone retaining walls that kind of are between the lower bridge and the upper bridge. So generally speaking, we find that this project is appropriate.
Great, thanks, Brittany. Are there any questions for staff? All right, then let's get the applicant promoted here. Excuse me. And go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready. Start with your name and address. You have up to 10 minutes.
And you'll need to let me know when to move slides. So everyone coming over? Yep.
Pat Bowman, Red Rocks, Fin Director for Red Rocks. Beth Tosti will do the presentation.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tara, just so you know, it kind of went in and out when you were talking.
Sorry, I was just introducing myself, Tad Bowman, the venue director for Red Rocks, and saying that Beth will do the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, Beth Tosti, I work with Jacobs. Address is 717 17th Street in Denver. And as far as the phase 2 design detail review, Brittany gave a good summary of everything. So you'll see some duplicate pictures and things in here. But I wanted to kind of recap on a couple items in particular, and then move forward with the Q&A. If you can advance the slide. Thank you. So the design details that we submitted, basically, like Brittany was saying, they align well with the character defining features that we previously determined, and those were based on the historic and the aesthetic considerations. A lot of it was based on, as she mentioned, trying to replicate or mimic the existing bridges as they are in space now. We did consult with the preservation organizations and obtain their feedback, and that helped to develop our final design plans that you guys are seeing in the packet. Just a recap of the character defining features. I think Brittany went over these fairly well, and then we also have in the packet some visuals of identifying what each one of these character defining features are. So I'm happy to run through those again later if you guys would like, but I think it sounds like we've already gone through those a few times and given a good coverage to it. As far as the consultation with preservation organizations, a big thank you to those folks that fed into the preservation groups that we consulted with. We really built upon the meetings that we had previously with those groups and got some good feedback. We identified what had changed from the last time we had met with them, received the feedback on the mix of materials as Brittany was going through, and then also the materials that we have for the rest of the structure, including the color schemes, and then provided them a quick update on the hair documentation, which is also something that we determined through those consultations previously was beneficial to the project. So ERO Resources Corporation is helping us with the hair documentation. They're currently going through the archives right now. They have already obtained, I guess you could say, the large format photography. They did that in October and are in the process of finalizing the document to send over to national parks. The same view that Brittany had shown as far as the project as a whole, the big reason that I wanted to pull this one up again is previously when we met with you guys, we had only talked about the structures. And since that date, which has been almost a year, we've added the addition to the project of the trail leading up from the parking lot to the lower structure. For the most part, this is just a replacement of the existing trail so that we can have better maintenance on the project. It's currently an asphalt trail and we're replacing it with concrete to match the rest of the system, which is also what's used above the structures outside of the limits of the project. I also wanted to use this photo to identify, you can see a circle near the bottom of the trail. Right to the right of that, there's kind of a black splotch in this view. It's kind of hard to see at this scale, but there's a culvert that runs underneath there, and that is where the retaining wall occurs on the trail. And so I wanted to identify that location as we move forward with the slides. As she showed, these are the existing conditions. I will highlight primarily the existing bridge handrail that has the curved shape. We have replicated that sizing, and the additional slats are in there for the safety, have changed just slightly, but for the most part, we are trying to replicate that. And then the lower right picture is where you'll see that existing retaining wall. The reason I'm highlighting that is because ERO has determined that it's not a historic wall in that respect. So it looks to be from their assessment to be cobbled together probably as a maintenance project over time. So it isn't representative of anything historic on the project. So we're proposing to replace that similar to the other retaining walls like you see in that bottom left photo. Existing structures, and this is where you can really see those character defining features of the curvilinear alignment, the narrow piers, really trying to get those proportions as skinny as possible on most of the elements in here. And then you can also see the existing handrail. Like she mentioned, it has kind of that chevron pattern that is not really representative of the original handrail. So replacing that with the original style to better match what was originally there. The photos here are identifying that smooth edge to the bridge. The top one is the lower structure and the bottom one is the upper structure. I've also added a photo in here that shows what it looked like after they removed that fascia plate. There was a lot of rust and deterioration underneath. They've cleaned it up and painted over it, but you can see the tie rods and things that used to be in there and the kind of the I-beam shape that was in there before. We're really trying to fall back to that pictures on the left where we have that smooth edge as one of the character defining features. As far as the materials board here, I think Brittany covered most of this pretty well. The weathering steel, while probably not fully intended on that pier, is a good precedent for us on that Natina that we have in that bottom second picture. And then Natina, I'll cover it a little bit more in a minute as far as the compatibility, but it is similar to a weathering steel product. The big benefit of this and why we chose this product in particular is because we know that the last time we presented to you guys, there was some concern about any weathering steel bleeding onto the rocks, because obviously the rock formations are what's the prominent feature out there. So this doesn't bleed onto anything below it like a weathering steel or core 10 would. It also helps us to provide a good long-term maintenance solution. It's underneath the Natina treatment is the galvanized steel. So while we get this nice rustic finish out of it as it looks now in the picture, we also have that treatment or the galvanized steel underneath that helps us to provide a long-term protection without the maintenance of what we have for painting the piers like they had currently. And you can see the system on the pier originally the paint system has failed over time simply because of how difficult it is to get to the site. As far as the compatibility, I did select certain photos in here to identify how it matches with that existing pier, but it also really pulls out those bands of darker colors that are in the system out there on the rock formation for shiprock. And then it also matches, you can kind of see on that bottom middle photo, you can see certain spots which is similar to that desert varnish. And really that treatment system is replicating nature's true desert varnish process where it reacts with the elements within the rock and creates over time, it kind of creates this darker system on there. It kind of depends on what the material is and what elements are inside the rock, but on a lot of systems where you see it in arid environments, it's generally this darker color.
You might note that Beth is a fan of flat Andy, so she took the steel piece and put it in lots of different settings like flat Andy.
And then the visual simulations, as Brittany pointed out, it covers quite a bit of material here, but you can see that those sections of the plate, that fascia plate on the outside, it is a little bit more like this, where it looks like a modeled MOTT LED look to it, kind of like a weathering steel or core 10 wood. So you can see that we have sections of that attached to the side and following along with the curvilinear shape along the edge, and that's really the representative piece of that mix of materials. And then everything else outside of that, we spent a lot of time on the proportions, as we discussed in the phase 1, of really trying to slim everything down, but make it proportional to each other, similar to what the existing structures are. And then you can see that curved handrail on here as well. So I think between what Brittany provided and this, I think we've kind of covered it all. If you can go to the next slide, I think there's the last visual simulation on here. The only other thing that I think I didn't really highlight in these slides is the lighting. Brittany's correct. We have that lighting on the backside to highlight the rocks, which is existing now. We also are replicating what's existing out there with the handrails. There's lighting in the bottom of the handrail. It's like a little pod light that sticks in and shines down onto the trail. That'll be reusing a lot of that system in there. I think that covers it.
Thank you. Just in the nick of time.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any questions for the applicant team?
I did have a question, and I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding, because I think I was getting a little confused by some of the cut sheets that were included with as far as the Natina product goes. You're proposing to use that only on the fascia plate for the edge of the two, the lower bridge and the upper bridge. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. Everything else, as far as the color scheme that you saw in the material board, is really kind of playing off of the fact of what we have out there for the handrail. Like Brittany was mentioning, that Tanemic boulder color, that pinkish color that blends in with the environment out there. A lot of it was based off of that scheme for everything else. And since the other elements are concrete, everything else will be based off of either or it will be either natural, like you can see on the underside of the deck, or it'll be the stains.
And so the advantage in your mind to using the Natina rather than painting the fascia plate is maintenance, essentially. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, it seems like the conversations that we had with all the preservation organizations, when they really started to express the interest in this, in reusing this mix of materials that was prominent from that period of time, when we started talking about painting the steel, we're kind of getting away from the ideal of what it used to be and why it was used back then. Once you start painting it, you can no longer really tell that it's steel. In that vein, we could have painted the concrete of the same color, and you probably wouldn't have known the difference necessarily of steel versus concrete. So it was really trying to pull out that obvious feature of the steel versus having the concrete that's there underneath of it.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, did you have a question too?
That was actually the question, the painting the fascia versus the natural material. So I think that answered it for me.
Great. Any other questions for the applicants? Anne.
I have a question about the concrete stain. Basically, if you know anything about its warranty, how long it stays that color, and what the maintenance is to keep it that color?
I'd have to research on how long. The products that we've put into the packet was all products that are approved by CDOT. They use them on all of their projects. They're actually getting away from a previous system that they had for using like a coating, simply because they don't want it to chip off. So the stain bleeds in a little bit better and retains the color a little bit longer. The good news, obviously, with this is people shouldn't be up near it like they would be on a highway bridge, where if they hit it, you can see the color differential between the two. So I think that the overall long term of this should be staying up there for quite a while. I don't, from my recollection, I don't recall any fading, if you will, of the product over time.
I guess I'll just ask one more question, because we know that there's a lot of sun up there, and I'm sure some of it's in shade and some of it's in sun. And so I think my question sort of is, and maybe nobody knows the answer to this, how likely is it to remain a uniform color over time? And you probably don't, I don't know if you have any experience, or anybody does, knowing.
Yeah, I don't have too much experience with what it would be like over time. But I do think because of the shadows, you would probably see a differential in color no matter what, because the shadow itself provides, and that's part of what we had the challenge of doing these visual simulations, was identifying exactly where the sun is in these simulations and how it plays with the colors. It looked a lot lighter on that tall, skinny portion of the pier versus the top of it, because the sun is shining on it. So you can see just the differential of the face that's in the sun and the face that's not. I think you would have some of that play of colors out there already anyway, where portions of it would never be in the sun.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let's open it up for comments. If anyone would like to make a comment on the project, please use the hand raise button.
one person on the phone. So if the person on the phone wants to speak, dial *9 and that'll raise your hand for us. Looks like we have 3 people lined up right now. So Chris is first. And let's see, and Marika just flashed off and back on. So I'm going to call her second because she was waiting for a while. So Chris first, then Marika, then Amy.
And please start with your name and address. And you have up to 2 minutes. So Chris, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Chris Lafferty, 23305 Ullman Park Road in Conifer. And I'm just here representing Friends of Red Rocks and to express our support for this project. And also we appreciate the involvement and the really thoughtful process that went into this project. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
Next. Yep, there we go. You'll need to unmute. Yep, there you go.
Thank you. So this all looks like really comprehensive and really well thought out, like the other person just said. However, I do have a question because there was like a comment that because the uplighting is not lighting a building, that it seemed like it could be okay. But I think the reason why we don't uplight is because of light pollution and the damage it does to nocturnal animals. And because this is a park, I'm just wondering, like, maybe that's actually not a good reason to not consider uplighting. I'm wondering how much uplighting there is and whether they've thought about, especially, like I'm saying, it is a park and it is a dark area, what the consequences environmentally that's going to hold. I like looking at pretty rocks as much as anyone else, but I just feel like it needs more consideration. And exactly how the lighting is going to be reflecting up and, how many hours per day and things like that.
Could you repeat your name and address for the record?
Marika Bielman, 147 West First Avenue.
Thank you. We do an audio recording of this, and so that's why, just since they won't see your name. All right, Amy, you are next. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. This is Amy Harris. I also am a member of Friends of Red Rocks. I previously served on the Friends of Red Rocks board and as the chair of the Friends of Red Rocks Action Committee, and was in those roles when this proposal first came to be several years ago now it's been. And I just wanted to be here to make sure that I was able to watch this presentation, because all along the ways we've considered what to do about the structure and how to balance the safety with the recognition of the incredible architectural feat that it was at the time that it was built, and to honor that. And through tons of meetings and through a lot of correspondence and through effective listening and just a lot of really careful consideration, we have a structure that really very closely replicates the original structure, but has the added benefit of safety. And that is something that is just so incredibly important to Friends of Red Rocks and to Denver. And I would like to note for the previous speaker with a note about lighting, I would hope that in the replication, that the lighting is also perhaps replicated, so that there isn't, any additional lighting or anything that might have those negative impacts that the previous speaker was thinking of. So in the spirit of replication, then, if the lighting is about the same, then hopefully that will help to make sure that the ramp has the same impact as it always did, and also has the same kind of, lighting impacts that it always has. And just, looking at the ramp and seeing what's been created through, and this is a pretty far departure from some of the original sketches of what the ramp could have been too. So it just goes to show that there was a lot of listening and that there was a lot of really hard work that was put into this. And I'm really excited to support this project on behalf of Friends of Red Rocks. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? All right. Any recap, Brittany? Yeah.
So when I researched the coating product, I found that it had a lifetime warranty for chipping, peeling. One more thing, can't think of it. It doesn't cover settling of like the building or things like that and doesn't cover labor costs. And you do have to transfer the warranty, I think within 30 days to like a new owner. If a new owner takes control of the property, I don't imagine Red Rocks will be sold at any time soon. But I did see a lifetime warranty for this product offered by this manufacturer. That would be my only recap.
Julie, did you have something to add?
I had a questions for staff if we're ready for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
It might actually be for the applicant as well. So I thought the comment about the lighting was interesting. I actually hadn't thought about that. But does somebody here know what is the plan for the lighting? How long? I mean, I'm mostly worried about or concerned about when the lights are on. If they're just on during the concerts or shortly thereafter, that would be different than if they're on all night, every night, certainly in my view. Does anybody know how long the lights are going to be on?
So I definitely can't answer that. That's probably a question for Tad specifically.
Let me see if we can, instead of move you over, because that takes a while, Tad, you're welcome to unmute yourself, and I'm going to put same with Beth if you have that answer.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, a couple ways. One is that the lighting that's going, there's a couple things on the lighting that was shown that lights up the rocks is really just replacing lights that are currently out there lighting the rocks. And they shine on the rocks. This is not something that shines, sort of in the air, just based on the way the rocks are there. So it really just highlights the rocks in kind of that, it's hard to point because I don't have my pointer, but just in this sort of area that you see that, I don't know, sort of recessed area of the rocks. So it kind of is hidden from just dark skies kinds of questions. It's really not much different than the lights that are lighting the rocks in the amphitheater. To answer the question about when they're on, they literally are only on when we have shows. So they're turned on for the show gets over, everybody leaves, and then the lights are turned back off.
Okay, thank you.
One thing we didn't really talk about, there is some lighting that's in the handrail that specifically lights the walking path only. So we've actually, over the years, reduced the amount of, by using these handrail lights that shine straight down on the walking path, we've eliminated other uplighting that used to exist at the bottom of the ramp that was used for safety reasons. So we've actually reduced a good amount of that kind of uplighting. But the lighting on the side of the thing, side of the walkway is really hitting the rock. It's not really shined upwards.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. And one more question about that. They were asking about the number of fixtures, and I'm looking through the plans and I, see the details. I can't, is it just 2 or how many of these fixtures are there?
You're correct.
I believe it's just probably 2 that are on that back side of the.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. I believe, if I remember correctly, there's 2 out there now, and they're replacing it with 2. They will be LED lights, but they're not a significant. As you guys are aware, when you go from a standard bulb to LED, it gets really bright. We're not having the high lumens. It'll be more of a soft white, similar to what it is now.
Great, thanks. Any other questions regarding the lighting that we need input on from the applicants before we deliberate? No. All right, thank you both. Okay, so a lot to think about. And yeah, I remember seeing this project. I can't believe that the temporary approval is already up, and I didn't think it had been that long. So what did everybody think of how this meets the guidelines and the existing design? All right, I'm going to call on people. Anne, what do you think?
Well, I think that the applicant did a terrific job of giving something that really harkens back to the original, but making it something that has life safety and its structural integrity. So I agree with the staff. The one detail that I worry about is that steel fascia plate. Because if you look at any of the, and whether it's actually necessary at all, because if you look at any of the pictures to me, and maybe it's because it's been overpainted so many times, that edge doesn't look like anything. It just looks like nothing. And I worry a little bit about the plate because it's a little bit of a false sense of history, because it doesn't really do anything. It's just a fascia plate on one side that's attached into the concrete, unless I'm missing something. And I guess I also worry about the color difference between the stain of the concrete and the tonemic of the plate, which again, I don't know if you can find it. I have if you can pull up the detail, the construction detail, and it's about sheet 60, but I think we saw it before.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I don't
yeah.
have that in the packet, sorry,
Okay.
or the
Otherwise,
presentation.
yeah, I mean, if anyone's looking at theirs and you look at sheet 60 out of 70, you can see it. Otherwise, I think this is just a wonderful and really sensitive replacement. And it has taken many years, and obviously a lot of really good listening and good input. So I'm supportive. I'm just curious what everybody else thinks about that fascia plate.
No, I'll just jump in as far as this isn't a true reconstruction in the sense that we're not completely reconstructing the bridge as it was. However, I do feel like that's kind of the guiding spirit of this design. And so for me, I'm not particularly concerned about, the general idea of new construction needing to kind of differentiate itself from old construction, because I feel like that what it's really trying to do is keep the original or historic bridge, which unfortunately just can't meet safety standards today. So it doesn't, in some ways, it's a conundrum for me because it doesn't feel like that's quite the right standard to apply to this project. And so I guess I don't have an issue with having the fascia plate because I think it is part of the original design that we're kind of looking to carry through to today. So I know I'm kind of straddling a line here, but to me, it's not clear cut one way or the other. But I think what we're really trying to accomplish is having the design of the historic bridge, which we just unfortunately can't without kind of rebuilding the whole thing with some details that just can't be replicated because of safety concern.
Good point. Other thoughts on the fascia? Did anybody else have concerns with that fascia plate?
This is Brett. I think I originally questioned it, I think like Ann did, just because it seems to be additive. They get the same sort of condition without it. But I think one of the comments that was made early on was how that smooth kind of swooping condition is kind of a character defining feature. And I think that's, in my mind, is how I've kind of resolved it. It is kind of the bigger move, the bigger gesture, the steel. I actually like the natural characteristic of it because it kind of breaks away from everything being so monochromatic. I know we don't look at colors, but I think it helps with that big move and that big gesture. And I was just trying to go back and look at some of the guidelines and how that relates to it. But there's a lot about respecting the character defining features. And I think this kind of it gets back to that, and it's interpreted a little bit differently than probably we're used to seeing, but I think it's successful. I think it reads really strongly, and I think the natural kind of characteristic of the material, how they're treating it, is going to fit really nicely in with the natural surrounding. So that's how I've resolved it. I think that, to Ann's point, that was one of the first things that kind of came across to me too, is why do you necessarily need that element? But I actually think it actually does a nice job tying into the surrounding, and it doesn't become just a painted feature that we might end up doing, or a stained feature like the concrete might become if it was just concrete by itself.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Anne. And I think I agree with both Erica and Brad's comments. And Brad, we do pay attention to color if it's integral. So yeah, the natural steel, I think we do have, you know, the ability to make comments on that. If there's no other conversation about the fascia, were there any other comments about the lighting? Or I think, you know, hearing what we have from Tad and Beth helped me kind of better understand, you know, that there's a minimal number of fixtures. They've been able to reduce the number over time. And now I do kind of understand, you know, in looking at the renderings, the rocks are so much taller. Like we're looking at just the bridge elevation. It looks like, oh, uplighting would just go straight into the sky. But, you know, it's not necessarily just straight up to the sky, you know, as it would look in the line drawings. So, and it's good to hear that it won't be on, you know, all night. So that's
Right.
good.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that was my concern, was how long they would be on, and I'm perfectly comfortable with the lighting the way it's proposed.
Okay. Nodding heads. Everybody else okay with the lighting? All right. Were there any other items people wanted to address? And if not, would someone like to make a motion?
I can make the motion.
Great, thanks, Anne.
Madam Chair, I move to approve application number 2022-COA-029 for the Phase 2 Design Detail Submittal for the replacement plan for the South Pedestrian Bridge at 18300 West Alameda Parkway, Red Rocks Amphitheater and Park, as per 2F, 3C, 4A, 5B, Design Guidelines 2.12, 3.2, 3.3, 4.6, 5.1, 5.22, Character Defining Features for Red Rocks Amphitheater and Park, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you. Will someone second the motion?
I'll second.
Thanks, Brad. All right.
It sounds like you maybe missed 4B. And these are intent statements.
Oh, okay.
Did anyone?
I caught that too, Jen.
Yeah. So yes, she missed 4B.
Yes.
Okay. Could someone?
I'll make a friendly amendment to insert intent statement 4B as well.
I accept.
I accept as well.
Great. All right. Then if there's no further discussion on the motion, let's vote. Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the project is approved. Next up, we have 2022-COA-024 at 452 Humboldt Street. Take it away, Beth.
Thank you, Kelly. So our next project is at 452 Humboldt Street. This is a contributing building to the Driving Park Historic District. This building has been unoccupied for the last 37 years, and the applicants are in the process of rehabbing the building to make it livable. As part of the rehabilitation, they're proposing some alterations and an addition to the building, and they're also proposing a total window replacement. The commission previously reviewed this proposal at the December 7th meeting. At the time, the commission denied the application as it proposed stuccoing the historic structure, and the application was not deemed complete. Based on commission and staff feedback, the applicants have revised their application, removing the proposal to stucco the building from the scope of work. As you can see here, they have moved forward with repairing and repointing the structure throughout. They've also repaired portions of the building that have been damaged by water infiltration. So good feedback. So at the rear, the applicants are proposing to demolish an existing enclosed porch and garage. Although the garage is not called out as contributing to the Driving Park Historic District, it was built within the period of significance for the district. However, it's been unmaintained for many years and is a state of severe disrepair. Furthermore, it is very small and can't fit a modern car in it. Instead, the applicants are proposing to construct an attached 3-car garage and single-story addition with a side patio on the south side of the property. So here's the elevation, the front and rear elevations of the proposed addition, which will be set back from the front of the structure. The proposed addition and garage will be smooth slab siding with a 4-inch reveal. The single-story addition will be inset on the north side and will serve as a connector to the garage. Within the surrounding historic context, there are several attached garages, including across the street at 475, 467, and 461 Humboldt. The garage will be set back from the front elevation by 46 feet and will be partially obscured from view by the side patio. The addition with the garage will be approximately 1,100 square feet, will be a maximum of 17 feet tall, while the existing structure is 21 feet tall. On the original structure, the applicants are proposing to create a new pair of French doors on the south elevation, as you can see here. These doors will be located behind a historic oriel window and will open onto a new side patio. The side patio will be elevated, but will be visually unobtrusive from the street. A side trellis will be supported by columns whose design draw from the front porch columns. And based on staff feedback, the applicants have simplified the number of new openings on the south elevation from the first iteration. The applicants are proposing this French door and in addition to 2 new windows flanking an existing windows in what will be the new kitchen. These new windows will be the same size as the existing window. And then on the north elevation, the applicants are proposing the addition of 1 window, again, matching the proportions of the existing window. Sanborn map research indicates that the house originally had a wood shingle roof. And so although initially the applicants proposed a red clay tile roof to match the mission revival details of the house, they're now proposing a composite roofing material, Beaumont Shake in black, to recall the original roofing material. The applicants are also proposing wooden garage doors and wood windows for the addition and new wood windows for the structure. So let's get into the total window replacement. The applicants are proposing to replace all of the windows in the structure. This is 15 windows in the original structure. 12 of these windows were replaced during a renovation in the 1920s. So while they are historic windows and they were installed during the district's period of significance, they are not original to the structure. All of the windows have been sealed shut with adhesive and caulking over the last 40 years and currently cannot be opened. Additionally, a lack of maintenance has allowed the window putty to crack and deteriorate, allowing water to infiltrate the windows and accelerate wood rot throughout. The window evaluation was performed by the project architect, Steve Culbertson. Landmark staff, myself and Jen Capetto, did do a site visit to the property on December 13th. And at that time, we noted the poor condition of the windows, observing rotted sills, sagging meeting rails, and a lack of window putty throughout. But we'll go through the windows elevation by elevation. So on the west and primary elevation, there are 3 windows labeled here as windows 1, 12, and 13. Windows 1 and 12 on the first floor are perhaps the best condition of the windows throughout the whole building, as they've been protected by the elements by the front porch. However, these windows do have cracked window putty in addition to rotting sills and muttons. While most of the windows throughout the structure are simple 1/1 double hung windows, window 12 does have a 4/1 light pattern, and the applicants are proposing to replace this window with a matching light pattern. Window 13 is on the second story and is a rounded arch 3/1 single hung window. This window has been cocked shut, as you can see in the middle photograph. It displays rotted sills, cracked buttons, and missing window putty. On the north elevation, we have windows 2 through 6 and 14. Windows 2 through 4 make up an oriel window. These windows are very close to the adjacent structure, so it's difficult to get full pictures. However, these are all 1/1 double hung windows. These windows display rotted sills, cracked buttons, and missing window putty. Additionally, the joint where the stile and rail meet shows significant deterioration, as can be seen in these detailed photos. Windows 5 and 6 are located towards the rear of the house. These windows display rotted sills, cracked buttons, and missing window putty. And additionally, some of the window sill meeting rails show sign of sagging. Window 14 is on the second story of the structure and cannot be accessed from the exterior for photos. However, photos from the interior show extensive damage to the sills and rails, and the window has also been cocked shut. On the south, we have windows 7 through 11 and 15. Windows 9 through 11 make up a matching oriel window. These windows display rotten sills, cracked buttons, and missing window putty. And additionally, the joint where the stile and the rail meet shows significant deterioration. And during the landmark site visit, staff noted that a power washer or other abrasive tool had been applied to these window sills, which was damaging the wood of the sill. Windows 7 or 8 are located towards the rear of the structure on the south side. These windows display a similar level of deterioration as those on the rest of the elevation and have also been damaged by overgrown vines. The brick around the window has been repaired, which can be seen on in the photos on the left. And just as a note, window 8 is being proposed to be removed for the French door that I mentioned earlier. And finally, window 15 is located on the second story of the structure. It has been sealed shut and it displays the similar sort of rotted sills, cracked buttons, and missing window putty. And the joints where the stile and rail meet show significant deterioration. So the applicants are proposing to replace all the windows with Sierra Pacific wood windows. They will match the windows in operation and light pattern. So therefore, windows 12 and 15 will have a different light pattern from the rest of the windows, which are just proposed to be 1/1 double hung windows. The applicants are not proposing to change the size of the windows to be replaced, except for that window number 8, which will be turned into a French door, and window 7 will be replicated with a window on either side in the kitchen. And then here's an example of the typical window measurement found on the structure, along with proposed measurements of the replacement windows. Windows that are not this size will be replaced in kind to match existing proportions, which would be windows 9 and 11. So overall, staff finds that this project meets the design guidelines. The addition will be subordinate to the historic structure and the surrounding context, guidelines 3.1 through 3.9. The proposed roof replacement will replicate the historic material of the roof. The historic porch will be repaired and constructed with existing and in-kind materials, and the window replacement will be in kind as well. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of this project.
Thank you, Becca. Are there any questions for staff? No? All right, let's hear from the applicants.
Well, Emily moves them over. Becca has their presentation all ready to go.
Yeah, now I have to figure out how to share my screen.
It's at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh.
No,
Maybe.
it should be next to hand raise.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
like a green button.
I'm here, Becca.
Oh, great.
Here, I'll get out of this one and then I'll stop sharing, but just, yeah. No,
Sorry, everyone.
Stop moving your mouse.
I'm not. Oh.
There we go. It's all you, Becca.
All right. Oh, there we go. Okay, got it. Great.
We can't see it. Oh, there we go.
Okay, there you go.
We can see it.
Cool.
We can see it. All right. So if you'd like to get started, please start with your name and address for the record, and you have up to 10
Absolutely.
minutes.
Sure. So my name is Jessica Armijo. I know the name says Lucas. That is my husband. Our address is 452 North Humboldt Street in Denver, 80218. So as you can see on the slide, my name is Jessica Armijo. I grew up in Boulder, so I'm local to the area. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner who works at Children's Hospital Colorado in the emergency department, where I am prepared to take care of any emergency that walks through the door. I am terrified to be here today in front of you guys. So here we go with that in mind. My husband, Lucas, is my partner in crime. He also grew up in the Denver metro area. He works from home in research and development as a surgical robotics product manager. And I think it's important for you guys to know about our family as well. We've got 1-year-old twins at home who are the happiest 1-year-olds you've ever met in your life, John and Juliet. And then we have an amazing medical alert dog whose name is Zero. If you want to go to the next slide, Becca. It's important for us to tell you guys a little bit about our family because we plan to move into this house and keep it as our forever home. So we've been very intentional about the decisions that we've made. I think also in regards to some of the comments that were made last time, I think we want to make it clear to you guys that we don't really do anything haphazardly. We think through things sort of to the nth degree. As an emergency room provider, I would never put a Band-Aid on an arterial bleed. I don't want to cover up something that is broken. We want to fix the problems. That's very important to us to, again, ensure that this structure stays for at least the next 100 years. That's very important to us. So since we were last here with you guys, as Becca had noted, we had a site visit by both Becca and Jen. They were able to come out, kind of look at the property with us and guide us. So as she had noted, we had previously advocated for stucco because we were very concerned about the condition of the brick. After meeting with both Becca and Jen, they sort of assured us that the brick looked much better than we had anticipated. And so we have abandoned the stucco effort and are really happy with the brickwork that's been done. Additionally, we've continued to engage with structural engineers. So we had met with them even prior to purchasing the home and had some stamped plans from them indicating sort of what was going to need to be done to support the rehab and the remodel to ensure that the structure was able to stand. So we've continued to work with them. Additionally, we've partnered with our architect and then the community. We've asked the people who are the neighbors who have looked at this house that has unfortunately become an eyesore over the years to ask them what's important to them. And mostly they just say, fix it, please. Anything is better. Additionally, we have pointed a lot of the brick to ensure that we have done those repairs. We rebuilt the parapets. We understand that that's sort of an identifying feature of this type of home, and we wanted to ensure that they maintain their integrity. As you saw in that photo, we did some emergency porch bracing to prevent that porch from falling down because that is where the majority of the structural disrepair was coming from. You probably also noted in those initial photos the massive amounts of overgrowth and vegetation that was all over that property. So we took a lot of time and energy to pull all of that garbage out so we could really see what the house looks like. And then we've engaged with some inspectors to come in and tell us what have we got going on in that house. Our hope ultimately is that we come to you guys today so that you can help us save the structure and make this our forever home. And as it continues to sort of be a contributing home in this neighborhood. All right, Becca, next one. So I think some of the things that we anticipate you asking questions about that I would like to sort of preempt, the historic door opening. So on the south side where we're proposing to switch a window for a French door, there was originally a door on that side where stage coaches were able to enter. So that is one of the reasons why we want to add an entry back to that place. Questions regard to the garage. We recognize it's necessarily not always traditional to have the attached garage. This is actually scaled back from the original 4-car garage that we had wanted and proposed. It's actually not for the garage space. It's for the storage space above the garage. It's 2/3 smaller than my husband's current workspace. So he has actually worked from home for the last 10 years. It's not sort of an impact of COVID where he's doing it temporarily. This is what he's been doing for quite some time. And he needs to have a space where he's able to put his surgical robotic material. So that's primarily what it's for. Additionally, we're asking for it to be connected to the home, which we understand is not always traditional, while there is precedent on the block. Because as we noted earlier, Zero, our medical alert dog, needs to be able to get to him. So if the garage is disconnected, and if the workspace is disconnected, and heaven forbid my husband needs the dog, which does happen, he can't get to him if that space is connected. So really it's a safety issue for my husband. The addition to that house is being added in a way that truly has minimal impact from the front of the street and the structure. And the patio is again on the side of the home where there was that original entry, because we would like to use it as such where people can sort of gather. Lastly, and more importantly, and I think Steve will also speak to this after me, is the windows. So we recognize that the majority of the windows are not original. We are lucky that we purchased this home from a family member. And so he has had been the owner of the home for approximately the last 40 years. And he was around the home for a number of decades before that. So in that, we have been able to have the opportunity to learn a lot of history about the property. So while he has not lived in the property, it has unfortunately sort of laid in a state of disrepair. There's been neglect, which has led to severe deterioration and water damage. Over the years, the solution to that problem has been gluing, caulking, taping the windows closed. We also know from our uncle that the female or the woman who lived there before him was a reporter who was also a model who was very worried about miscreants breaking into her home. So she additionally had started the trend of gluing all of the windows shut. During our assessment, as our architect tried to open one of those windows, it actually shattered. So unfortunately, they do not work. They're in a complete state of disrepair just due to neglect and deterioration. And with that, I will pass the baton over to Steve, our architect, who might be able to give you some more details.
Okay, can you hear me?
We hear you, Steve.
Okay, good. I wanted to pick up on a couple of things that are not emphasized on the windows. One is that when the front of the house sagged so badly, it sagged as bad as 5 inches in that front porch. The windows in the front became twisted, and you could see it in the window jambs because they pull apart. So especially the great big window number 12 is pretty bad off. But we are able to save the window frames. So the curved windows that show up on, let's see, I forget what sheet that is. I think it's 9, will remain there. And a lot of it, if possible, will be the same wood. If not possible, then we will rehabilitate it in some way to look exactly the same as the existing windows. I think that is the primary thing I just wanted to get across, was those 2 points. We could talk about the windows themselves, that have the same kind of a wood fillet as the old windows do. And 14 of these windows are put in the existing frame. So that will be a great feature. Only 3 are cut in a way that Becca mentioned. The house that you guys already talked about, all the materials. I think we've just about covered it. So I'm done.
All right, thank you for your time. Are there any questions for the applicants? No?
I just have one, maybe just follow up on that window question. You said the arched windows, you'd reuse the frame. Are you literally leaving the frame in there and placing a new window with kind of in that, or is it you're taking it out and they're going to rebuild it to match?
You have to look at the details that occur on some of those sheets, but basically there's a great big 2-inch frame that goes around the windows, what would normally be the rough opening, and then the windows are inside that. So it's not necessary to replace that frame. We can leave that as long as it's okay, not rotted out or anything, which a lot of them are, but we don't know about all that stuff until we get to it.
Our goal though, Brad, is to save all of the frames that we can. We don't want to replace it if we do not have to. We'd like to save all of the frames that we can.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's what we're getting at here.
Yep. Thank you.
To know. Any other questions for the applicants? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. All right. Are there any public comments on this project? Please use the hand raise button or dial *9 if you're joining us by phone.
I don't see any hands raised, so no one yet.
Then well, Becca, do you have any recap?
Nope.
Okay, let's move into deliberation then. So we saw the staff report comparing the proposal to the design guidelines. What was everybody's thoughts on that?
I'll start in.
Great. Thanks.
So I first of all, I appreciate everybody going out and taking a look at the house. I think that was really helpful. So if I kind of look at it from maybe the windows moving backwards, it looks like they've done a nice job kind of explaining and showing the existing condition of the windows. So I actually don't have any issues with the window replacement. I think most of it seems like it's very necessary. And they've done a good job of documenting that. As far as the addition goes, I think that it is a very nice addition. I like how it is lower, tucked into the back. And I think they've done a really nice job of integrating it into the house. I don't have any issues with the connection to the garage. I think that, the primary house is so well maintained in this design that it works really well. And I think it meets the guidelines. So I'm supportive of staff recommendations. I think it's a really nice addition. And I think this will be a great addition to the neighborhood, having it cleaned up. Just some of the photos where you see the landscaping's been cleaned up and everything. It's a really interesting house.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, this is Julie, and you know that I love a historic window. I mean, it's one of the things I like to do when I save old houses, but looking at what the staff reported and hearing the stories of the windows being glued together, I don't think I've ever rescued a window that's been glued together. So at this point, especially after the house is empty for so very long, I also really love and appreciate that the staff went out there and that the stucco is off the table now. Thank you very much. I'm really excited about this. I don't have any trouble with this. I will support this application.
Great. And I see a lot of nodding heads. Yeah, I think this has seen a lot of great improvement since we last saw it. And I really appreciate the lengths that the applicant has gone to make sure that they're getting feedback from everyone and doing the right thing, and all the steps they've taken thus far to repoint and repair the parapets. And I don't know how you do all that with 2 one-year-olds and a full-time nurse practitioner job. So congratulations to that. And you shouldn't have been nervous about presenting to us because it went great. That was a very informative presentation. So kudos. I agree with everything that's been said, and with the staff report, I think this meets the guidelines. Any other comments? All right. Well, then who is going to have the pleasure of making the motion?
I can make the motion.
Thanks, Brad.
I move to approve application number 2022-COA-024 for the addition and total window replacement at 452 Humboldt Street as per design guidelines 2.6, 2.14, 2.19, 2.25, 2.34, 2.35, 2.38, 2.56, and 3.1 through 3.9. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second it.
Thank you, Julie. There is no further discussion on the motion. I will call for the vote. Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, we've got a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So next project up is 2022-COA-027, and it's at 431 Acoma or Acoma. I never know how it's pronounced.
Okay, so this is a review of the design detail application for a duplex and rear ADUs. So the proposed infill design references the two-story boxy flat roof terrace type buildings that are found within the Baker District. So the applicant is proposing a mix of stucco and brick with trim that is in steel and concrete, aluminum clad wood windows, and wood and aluminum clad wood doors. So the commission approved the mass form and context application on February 2nd, 2021, with the conditions that the facade fenestration and design of the rooftop structure and ADU be restudied prior to the submittal of the design detail application. The applicant has changed individual windows on the second floor of the facade to paired windows. On the rooftop structure, the roof design has been changed, the fenestration has been simplified, and the wall cladding has been changed to match the second floor wall cladding to blend in more with the primary structure. And then additional kind of trim has been added on the ADU. So you can see here, I included this image just so that you can see those modifications made between the previous and current designs. Staff finds that these conditions, that the changes meet the conditions set by the commission, but obviously that's up to you to determine so whether or not you think those conditions have been met. So here is the proposed facade of the building. So the duplex and the ADU will both feature brick cladding on the first floor and stucco above. While this configuration is not traditional of the district, the materials are, so that combination of brick and stucco are both materials found in the district, and their kind of use in this combination will identify the building as new construction. Decorative details include a stepped parapet with steel channel trim, and then also that steel channel trim will also be used on the porch supports. There will also be concrete sills, brick coins, and a vertical brick element visually dividing the duplex units. Most of the windows are traditionally proportioned 1/1 sash. Horizontal sliders will be used for basement egress windows, but these windows will not be readily visible. One suggestion that the staff does have is to raise the height of the brick cladding at the first floor to the height of the second level subfloor. So if you look there, and then that's just a little bit of a raise, but staff feel like with that, it would help create more visual balance, more clearly delineate, accurately delineate the first and second floors, and make sure, it's going to change how the brick cladding hits at the porch, and staff just feels that that's going to give, a little bit more balance to, kind of really define that first floor. So here is the proposed site plan. So you can see there's the proposed duplex. You then have the window wells, egress to the side. You have then a rear dividing wall, pergolas for each unit, and then the ADUs that are set at the back. One issue staff noticed on the site plan is that the site plan currently shows front gates on either side there of the building, but there is no indication of any fencing connected to those gates. So no property line fencing is shown. If no side or rear yard fencing is planned, then the front gates appear to be unnecessary. If fencing is planned, it does need to be shown on the plans. So here is a side elevation. So both sides are pretty much identical. So you can see there, fenestration further towards the front that's going to have more visibility is fairly traditional. All the windows, are fairly, some are wider, some are narrower, but there's more windows towards the rear, but those will not be as readily visible. Then you can also see here the design of the site wall at the rear. Staff has some concerns with this. So the applicant is proposing a rear divider wall that is 8 foot 3 inches tall and clad in manufactured stone veneer. Stone walls are not a characteristic feature of the Baker District, and a stone wall that's over 8 feet tall is going to be a pretty prominent feature, even though it is located at the rear. The wall also features a doorway with the wall height raised at this section so that there's kind of a section of wall above the door. Heights are not given for this doorway feature. Obviously, it's going to be taller than the 8 foot 3 inches of the adjacent wall. Staff would recommend simplifying the wall using brick for the wall instead of the manufactured stone to match the duplex and the ADU. And staff would recommend reducing the height of the wall at the door so that the wall is a single height, no taller than the adjacent 8 foot 3 inch height. So here are the rear ADUs. They feature simple boxy design, minimal ornamentation. They are clad with the same combination of brick and stucco that is proposed for the duplex. Here you see some of the details proposed. So the windows will have a cast concrete sill and will have a painted 10-inch steel channel header. You can see here detail of the parapet wall that is also going to be using the steel channel header, and then also a detail here, the brick coin that's going to be used at the corners. Then finally, so just some of those additional illustrations of the material. Here is the brick that is proposed. It is a smooth faced red brick. You have the wood doors that are proposed, and then this is that manufactured stone that is proposed for the rear wall. So overall, staff find that design detail of the infill structure and the associated ADUs relate to the district context, but believe that modifications to the brick cladding would improve portions of the building, which is guideline 4.3, and that site work should be simplified, which is guideline 5.9. So we would recommend approval with conditions. First, condition that the height of the brick cladding at the first floor be raised to the height of the second level subfloor. And second, that the rear divider wall should be continuous in height and clad in brick.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? No.
I guess I just have a quick question, Abby, about raising the brick to the level of the second subfloor. Would you then, how do you see that interacting with that cast concrete that we see at the vertical kind of chimney? Oh, it's on that
Sorry, I'm just trying to go back to get a.
Or you can see it here.
Oh, yeah.
So would you recommend that that be raised then as well to be on top of the new level of brick if that's how we go, or?
I think it could go either way. I think it could either stand out more that it's, you know, kind of stands out as a trim that contrasts with the higher brick, or that could be raised so that it's still above the brick. So.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? All right. And do we already have the applicant promoted? Oh. I think we might. Okay, great.
So we have 3 people who registered under the same name, Scott Robinson, and they both, the last one's not moving over, so.
Gotcha. All right, well, you can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready. Please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
Hi, my name is Scott Robinson with Lodestone Design Group. Address is 206 5th Street in Frederick, Colorado, 80530. And I am the senior designer for this project. So first of all, I want to thank Abigail and the staff there for walking us through this process with this project. I know it's been a long time, and she's helped us out tremendously of getting, you know, kind of the design where they feel like it could get passed and fits into the neighborhood. I want to start with as far as the overall design of the duplex. Most of the duplexes in the neighborhood are basically the fronts are just squares, single-story squares or 2-story squares. So we wanted to try to incorporate that, but also add, you know, some style to it from historic, you know, a traditional standpoint, and then add some, you know, more modern materials. So as you can see in the front there, as far as the materials, we try to use the red brick, which is very common on that street and throughout the neighborhood, and then also just try to use materials that will identify as new materials, but also still meet the characteristics of the terrace style designs. As far as the front porches, again, this is a characteristic of this style of the duplexes. Either there's a single porch over both the entrances, or they're separated. So we chose to go with the separated porches with a front-facing door that's wood. Again, instead of using a traditional wood door, we tried to go with a more modern looking, more up-to-date door that will also matches with the simple construction of the porches with the steel. So that's as far as the front. Then in the sides and the rear, we can kind of continue that theme around the sides and rear. The brick goes around throughout the whole both structures, up to the first or second floor of the structure, and we carry that. That's a main design line. We didn't want to go brick all the way full up, just so we can introduce some different materials to differentiate new construction. And then as far as the dividing wall, we wanted to that dividing wall is try to create more of a secret garden and more of a privacy wall from the adjoining unit. That's why the height is how it's designed. And that's why if the door is there, is almost like a secret garden passage. So if the neighbors have kids, and they can go through the door, play with each other in their backyards. But we don't have a problem with lowering the height of that wall where the door is to make it the same height as the rest of the wall. That shouldn't be a problem at all. And then as far as the ADUs in the rear, we just try to keep it very simple because it is right next to the alley, and you really can't see it from anywhere on the street except from the alley. So we just use it again, the same stucco above the brick, just to give it some context and characteristics of the terrace style. So that's all I have for now. We also have our principal architect, Jeff Van Sandbeek, He'd like to make some comments as well.
Hi, this is Jeff Van Sandbeek. I'm the principal architect with Lodestone Design Group. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. The address would be the same, 206 5th Street, Frederick, Colorado. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to sort of pair it with what Scott was saying about working with staff and getting through to this point, and hopeful that through the course of this meeting, any feedback that you guys have, any direction or thoughts that you might have on where the design is, or if it needs to push or pull in one direction or another, that we can participate in that portion of the discussion and try to make sure that we come out of this with a project that we can move forward to building permit and ultimately to construction. So yeah, I guess Scott and I are here and would love to be able to assist in any way we can. So yeah, I guess that would be all that we have to present. I don't think Dan moved himself forward as a presenter, but he is the general contractor on the project, and I believe he's also available to discuss today if need be.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for your time. Are there any questions for the applicants? Yeah, Brad.
I have a question. Yeah, and you know, maybe this is kind of more of taking a little bit of a step back a bit conceptually. Do you see this building, like when you guys think of this conceptually, is it a one-story building with an addition on top, or do you see it as conceptually as a two-story building? Because I think that adds to a couple other questions I might add, because I like the mass and scale of the building, but I think there's just a couple different things going on at the base versus then how it transitions to the upper level. So, and that kind of gets a little bit to some of staff's comments about where the brick transitions, but conceptually, how do you guys see this building? What are your feelings about that? Is it a singular building, or is it kind of a building that had an upper level addition put onto it at one time?
Yeah, I think I can take that. I mean, our concept of this building is that it is a two-story structure with the roof deck and third floor on top of it, if that makes sense. So we were not seeing it trying to mimic a condition where there may have been some sort of historic single-story duplex that then did a pop top and then hiding in the back is this third level. So much as just two-story new construction hiding that third floor condition. And the split with the brick line really had more to do with trying to limit how replicative we might be with other of the two-story duplex structures there are. And by using a stucco as an alternative material, try to make it a little bit more clear that we're not trying to mimic the historic construction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? I just have one, and well, I guess it's two, but seeing the staff conditions, recommended conditions, do you have any concerns if the commission were to decide in deliberation that we agreed with those conditions? Are there any concerns you have with those?
I can take that. I can answer that. We don't have any concerns with if one raising the brick from the to the top of the second level of subfloor, and also the dividing wall in the backyard, just making that all one level. We don't see that being a problem. I did want to comment on the comment she made about the fences. So we didn't show fences on our plan because there are currently fences on either side of the property already. So we didn't feel it necessary to add another fence next to a fence. But if you think that we should add a fence to complete the design, then we will obviously consider doing that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm guessing that it was just a question because oftentimes we see fences, and just wanted to make sure you knew that we do review the fence as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to say from a staff viewpoint, it would just be helpful for us as we're looking at it to indicate those fence lines and that your gates are going to connect to an existing fence line and just mark it as an existing fence and that we know that that it's going to connect.
Will do.
Great. Any other questions for the applicants? No? All right. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Are there any comments on this project? Please use the hand raise button or dial *9 if you're joining us by phone.
Who has their hand up?
Great. Ozzy, go ahead. Please start with your name and address for the record.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you. My name is Ozzy Friedrich at 528 West First Avenue in the Baker neighborhood. The Baker Landmarks Committee reviewed an earlier, very different version of this project, and I think generally it feels great how much it's changed through the course of its work. I did want to point out in our initial review, we asked that the ADU design be referred back to us once it was more developed, since there really wasn't much on the original submittal. That never happened, and to me it feels like I'm kind of concerned for the process working that way, where the ADU kind of slips through. And I think, as you all know, as a neighborhood landmark committee, we care a lot about the ADUs and we want to give them the attention they deserve. I don't know what the full committee's comments would be. Personally, I am concerned about the flat parapet. We do have many two-story low slope roof duplex ADUs in the neighborhood. They typically have a stepped parapet, very characteristic of their time, and a number of other features which we might be able to introduce through a review process or to kind of cue back to. And then I also did want to support, I guess, Brad's question or comment about the way that the material changes on the primary house, feeling like somebody put an addition on top of a historic one-story brick low-sloped roofed house. The material change as it is right now feels very uncharacteristic of the neighborhood. We do get material transitions in our buildings, but it's usually because there's a structural reason behind it. Like when the gable roof starts and you move to wood framing from brick framing. And in this case, changing from brick to stucco at that point feels fairly arbitrary. I believe at Mass and Scale, it was shown as an all stucco structure. And well, I think I've run out of time, but I'd say we do have historic brick buildings that were stuccoed in the neighborhood, as well as all brick two-story low slope buildings that are very characteristic. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Any other comments?
Scott, the applicant, has his hand up, but we don't usually have public comment during that period. They definitely had more time though. They didn't use their full 10 minutes.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly how many, but now it's his hands down. So.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe that was the best. Okay. All right. Then let's go ahead and move into deliberation. Looking at the guidelines, what did everybody think about this? And I guess I'd just like to say that Brad, kind of the comment you brought up and that the public comment also addressed, I do agree. When I looked at this, the first thing I thought of was that it does look like a pop top built on top of a one-story brick structure. And so I definitely agree with the staff's recommendation to move the brick line up for that reason, but also, would support either it all being one material, or it also just felt imbalanced to me that there's these thicker bands up at the top. They're the were they steel bands, and those feel very top heavy, but then there's really nothing at the transition from brick to stucco. It kind of felt to me like that's typically where you'd find some sort of, whether it's a soldier course or, you know, if the modern interpretation is a steel band, then maybe there would be one there. Transitioning between the materials, it just feels very cut up to me. And I think that kind of goes back to guideline, what was that guideline in the staff report? 4.3.
4.3.
Yeah, the scaling elements and articulation just seems a little off here.
Yeah, I mean, I think my comment was it's kind of either has to be one or the other. It seems like it's a little stuck in between, and I kept going back to 4.3 myself. And if you look at some of the precedent imagery, you know, it's the coining is a good example. It's like, I think the materiality of the porches and how all that's coming together is really nice. I think the scale, how it relates to the side buildings, but I think it's the elements, how it comes together. It either wants to be, you know, if it's upper and the upper portion of the building and it turns to stucco and it's kind of nice clean skin, then maybe if there's a transition to brick, the brick wants to be more in relation to that. And that's kind of the precedent imagery. It's either a building with coins that go all the way up, or it's a very clean brick building. And there's one image that was in the precedent imagery where there was a transition at the sill of the second story windows, and it was much stronger. So it kind of tied into that. And I think that's part of it. Maybe, you know, Abigail suggested going up to the floor level, but maybe it even needs to be stronger. It could be just that simple, but there just seems to be a one-to-one relationship between the ground floor and the upper level that just seems to be not as characteristic of the neighborhood when I look at some of the images that we see. That's why I ask about the idea of it. What, you know, is it an older building that had something added to it? Because that's what it feels like.
Yeah. I agree. Did anyone else have concerns about the proportions there?
I think that Brad is making some really going in a great direction. I think there is some really wonderful detailing. I look at the brick detailing of the coins and it looks really modern and clean, and I could definitely see how it would work. But then it's sort of, I agree, it sort of disappears. And I guess the other two parts of the detailing that concern me a little bit, first of all, is it has no base. And I think this drawing is a good example that the coining is so well done that you really want to see it turn and become horizontal and have it, the building actually end not only where it meets the stucco, but also where it meets the ground. And I think there's a vocabulary of it that's stopped, but it just gets cut off. So that's sort of not complete. That's one thing. And the other thing that I find a little bit odd, and I'm looking at the rendering at the very end, is that it's got two porches and it's clearly two units, but then it gets to the stucco and there's no differentiation between the two of them. So it's a little odd to tell what kind of building it is. And I think maybe in a previous one, there might have been something that went all the way through. And I think that would also sort of help the proportioning of the upper part, but it's not so much of a, if you actually saw it as two structures instead of two structures on the bottom and one on the top, that it might help actually the proportioning. But I do want to say that I think that the applicants really made a lot of progress since the last time we saw it. So I think there are a lot of elements here, they're just not completed. And I think Brad really did a good job of sort of describing how maybe they could be complete. I think I agree with him. I think if you brought the brick up to the bottom of the windowsills and had a steel piece that went all the way around, that's actually also Kelly's idea, that would sort of get you closer. But as I say, I actually also think it needs a base of some sort.
A good point, Anne. I agree with that. Any other thoughts here? What did everyone think of, trying to go back to the motion here. So we talked about the height of the brick cladding. What did everyone think about that rear site wall dividing the two backyards? Did everyone agree with Abby's assessment and recommended condition? Yeah.
I did.
Okay, great. See nodding heads. So yeah, I agreed with that too. And then I'd also like to bring up the ADU since there was a public comment about it. What did everybody think about the ADU? Erica, did you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I could understand Ozzy's point about kind of lack of a parapet and just that it feels kind of cut off. So it's too bad that I don't know quite how the process goes with RNOs and kind of redesigns, but it's too bad they weren't able to see the new design of it or the more fully developed one. So I guess I'm a little on the fence about it. I'd like to hear other people's thoughts.
I'd just like to clarify, we don't do re-referrals, like that's not part of our process. Same thing with, mass form and context gets referred, but design details doesn't get referred. I don't know the state of what the ADU was like when it was referred. So maybe that it was like super sketchy, and not really designed, but just wanted to clarify that we typically don't do a re-referral.
Yeah, so I'll just stress a little. Yeah, I'm sorry. Now that you mentioned that, Ozzy, I vaguely remember like a request that you wanted to see it again, but yeah, it's just not part of our standard process, so that got overlooked. But looking back through the plans, it looks like it's pretty much been the same boxy ADU since this first came to the commission in 2020. So I think at this point, by the design detail, I just wasn't even really thinking about those additional referrals again, because the form has pretty much been, at one point it had a hipped roof that got changed to a flat roof between the first and second mass form and context reviews, but otherwise it looks like it's, otherwise scale mat, except for that roof change, it's never had a lot of detail. It's been a pretty simple form at the rear of the lot. And I remember that we did have a fair amount of discussion of the ADU placement and its inset from the alley and the location of the ADU were all discussed during the first mass forming context. So I think after we discussed it in the first mass forming context, I think I just didn't really think about it much again. So sorry about that.
Thanks for clarifying that. Did anyone else have concerns about the ADU design? And the public comment we got from Ozzy, I think, was specifically about how it's very common in the Baker district to have stepped parapets rather than a flat parapet on secondary structures.
Kelly, I think that when you look at, this is a good slide to look at when you look at the previous design and the current design, and I'll go back and say, kind of repeat what Ann said. I think there's a lot of nice qualities about this, but there's not been a lot of evolution from a design detailing standpoint from the previous design to the new design. And I think it suffers a little bit from the same issue we talked about at the earlier, where the proportionality of it, the scale is fine. I think the box could work fine, but it's still this kind of 50-50 split. And really the only change that happened was the brick color changed, and that probably draws even more attention to the fact that these are very kind of equal and there's no hierarchy between the two. And even if, it's small enough, I'm not so concerned about the stepping of the parapet but it's just sort of that relationship from the upper to the lower, and how does that relate to as contextually what you see in the neighborhood. And to go back to some of the precedent images in the packet that they sent, there's some really strong kind of moves where there's transitions from material A to B, or there's a transition at a windowsill or something, and it's a much bolder kind of move. And I think that's what is not as strong here, and it's kind of what we're reacting to.
All right, so based on the conversations we've had, I guess I'm wondering whether, it seems like there are multiple ways to address these comments. You could go to all one material. You could, as Anne suggested, have something that kind of on the front facade translates up through the center, through the second story, right? To kind of delineate between the two units. What Brad had mentioned with raising the brick to the second story sill. So I guess what I'm getting at is I'm not sure that we can make these a clear condition if we have serious concerns about the detailing of the siding. So I think what might be cleaner is to do a denial so that they can study how they want to address those concerns of the proportions of the siding and the detailing of it. Does everyone agree with that? But I think we've given sufficient discussion and ideas of where our concerns are and thoughts we have that might resolve those. And it sounds like we may be also interested in seeing how that relates to the ADU. Those same comments go towards the ADU, is that right? Yeah. And we support the staff recommendation about making modifications to that rear divider wall. And just as a friendly comment, the applicant could go back to the R&O during this time while they're redesigning if they'd like the feedback from them as well to incorporate that. All right, well, but say it's a friendly denial. We do think they're headed in the right direction. So I hope this isn't too discouraging. It's really just the detailing, right? So who wants to make the motion?
Just a friendly reminder that the motion will have to use the guidelines.
Thank you. So I don't know if maybe we should discuss those now. So it's guideline 4.3 is the one that we've primarily struggled with, especially 4.3E. And then 5.9 is the one referencing the rear
fence.
Well, not fence.
That divider.
Rear site wall, yeah.
Yeah, those are the two I wrote down. I think those are the two that really get to the heart of the concerns.
I agree.
Great. Okay. Who's going to make the motion?
I'll make the motion. Give it a shot here.
Thanks, Brad.
I move to deny application number 2022-COA-027 for the design detail of the proposed infill at 431 Acoma Street as per design guidelines 4.3 and 5.9, character defining features for the Baker Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Erica. All right. If there's no further discussion on the motion, I'll call for the vote. Brad?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Kelly? Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So we will see you back for a resubmittal. We've got see, one more project on design review today, and it's 2022. Oh, Erica, did you have something?
I think we have two more. Is that correct?
You were late to join us because you had a power outage, and
oh yeah,
and there was a continuation, so we moved that one up to the very beginning so people didn't have to stick around. But the applicant requested we continue it to the next meeting, which is next Tuesday.
So this one, the 151 West First?
No, the one on 32nd Avenue.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So you only have one item, and it's this one that Abby's about to do.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, that is confusing, huh?
No, I'm sorry that I was late.
No, and actually, if anyone else is on the line who was waiting for that one, who wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting, that application on 32nd Avenue has been continued to next Tuesday's meeting. So I hope nobody's been waiting for it.
Yeah, Jesse had the forethought to email all the people who provided public comment written to you all to tell them so that they didn't have to stick around. And I've been monitoring, and it's been a fairly small group of people who've been on
that was smart. That's good. Okay, so we do just have the one more left. It's 2022-COA-028 at 151 West First Avenue.
Okay, thanks. So this project and review is for the rehabilitation of a carriage house that's located to the rear of 151 West First, and the conversion of the carriage house into an ADU. So you see here the images of the primary residence and then this carriage house to the rear. So the carriage house does appear to be an original feature of the property, constructed at the same time as the house. The carriage house is located to the rear and accessed via Bannock Street. Both the primary residence and the carriage house appear on the 1890 Sanborn map. The Baker Historic District Ordinance does not identify contributing and non-contributing buildings within the district, but due to the age, size, character, visual prominence, and integrity of the carriage house, staff would recommend that it be considered as a contributing building. Okay, so here we have the site. So you can see the primary residence and the carriage house to the rear. I primarily included this here just so that you can see that there are definitely some challenges with the location of this carriage house and then its conversion. So the applicants have been working for quite a while to try to work out all the code issues with this, because it is located right on the alley and it is located right on the property line. So that definitely creates some issues with fire separation and code. And so they've been working a lot over the past year to try to resolve, various code issues and figure out how to make an ADU work with the existing structure and its location. So here you have the facade facing the street. So in this facade, they are proposing to enlarge the garage door opening and install new doors. The doors will match the design of the existing that'll be replicated. They're going to remove the plywood infill that's located at an upper level window, expand the opening, and install a new window there. They're also going to remove damaged areas of brick and rebuild sections of the wall as needed. So here we have the portion of the ADU that's on the alley, and then also the portion that is on the property line facing the neighbor's house. So on the alley, they are proposing to install skylights on the roof and to infill the opening that's currently just covered with plywood, to actually infill that door opening with brick. And then on the rear, they are proposing to replace the wood shingle siding on the gable end with fiber cement shingle siding to meet fire requirements, since this is on a property line. The existing windows, they're proposing to keep them in place, but they will be closed off on the interior with rated assembly for fire separation. And then you have here the side, the kind of interior side that is facing into the backyard. So here they're going to add a new roof dormer with an egress window. The dormer is going to be clad with fiber cement shingle. They're going to reopen an existing bricked door opening. They're going to expand the width of both door openings to 3 feet wide and install new brick arch headers that match the new door widths. They're going to install a new wood paneled half-light doors in these new openings and also install a new AC unit on this facade. The staff is recommending approval. The functionality of the carriage house will be enhanced through the enlarged garage and pedestrian door openings, making it a functional building that can be used as an ADU and garage. Character defining features of the carriage house will be retained wherever possible and replicated when needed. Windows will be aluminum clad wood and doors will be wood. Dormer and skylights will be added to the roof for livability of the upper level apartment and to provide egress. And they do have a letter of support from the Baker R&O Landmarks Committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Yeah, Erica.
I had one question about the door on the north that was to be infilled with brick. So I know the other opening has been infilled and that infill hasn't been set back, but I was wondering if, Abby, you feel like our kind of normal guidelines as far as insetting brick to show original openings should be applied in this case to the door opening that's to be infilled.
I didn't feel it was particularly essential in this instance, just because it will still have that arched header. And so I felt that the arched header was really going to clearly delineate where the infill was, but certainly you can add that condition if you want to see it recessed.
Makes sense as far as the arch heading. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? No? All right, then we'll go ahead and hear from the applicant. So you can unmute yourself when you're ready. Please start with your name and address for the record. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dawn McNulty, 151 West First Avenue. And I actually think that this has a new address, which is 153 West First Avenue. I'm not quite sure. I think I did that already though. I didn't hear your whole question because I was added as a panelist, but I wanted to share that wood on the north side, that wood panel, that is actually brick on the inside of the carriage house. So I don't know what's going on there, but I do think it's already bricked inside, but not outside. So I just assumed that we would, brick it up. And thank you to Abigail. She has been very supportive. This has definitely been a journey over the years. We bought this house in 2017. And Abigail helped me throughout our journey of trying to just restore this house to its original integrity. Specifically with this, there's no foundation to it. So we have to have helical piers, steel beams, all sorts of structural supports. Very possibly it could fall down in the process of doing this renovation to it. And my husband and I just felt that in order for us to invest that kind of money in this type of structure, that we would just have to make it a livable unit, and also just helping the densely populate our community because we need more housing. So that's it for me. Thank you. Our architect is also joining me today. He's been through several iterations. We definitely had a lot of discussions with the building committee. All of the folks down at the city around permits, back and forth on what they needed us to do. I think we're finally there, which is why we're resubmitting. And I do have a Board of Adjustments approval already. I don't know what the process is because we just kind of ran out of money for renovations, and that permit is 3 years old, over 3 years old. So I don't know if I have to purchase, that again, or what that process is if I have to go through the BOA again.
And I'm Bill Meyer, and I'm the architect on the project. We did have one question. If you can go back to the elevation that faces Bannock Street with the garage door. Don and Jacob have expressed an interest in possibly expanding the window above the garage door. So right now, in that picture on the left, you can kind of see it's a serve slot. And when we were looking at the historic background of this, we believe it was actually an ice house, and that opening was originally larger. The intended use of the space behind that wall is going to be a bedroom, and so that was part of a reason for adding other egress windows and dormers and things of that nature in other locations. What we would like to know is if there's any possibility that we could possibly bring that window down and basically make it taller. So maybe not necessarily wider, but if we would be allowed to bring that down so that we can meet sill height for egress and get a little bit more light in there. We would still be preserving that decorative metal element that you see, but most likely it would mean adding a stone sill underneath that window, but basically just making it a little bit larger and letting a little more light in, and also meeting egress for that window that you see proposed.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, just one other comment. So I don't know if Ozzy's still on the phone, but the zoning committee and landmark committee, they were also really helpful in doing some research for us and talking about their knowledge that this was the original ice house for our community. So they did share some photos of the longer, taller windows that were there before, and we know that's not the original window structure that's there right now.
All right, thank you. And I don't think we got your address. I'm sorry. What was your name? The architect?
Oh, Bill Myron.
Oh yeah, my name is Bill Myron. I'm with EV Studio. We're at 5335 West 48th Avenue, Suite 300, and that's Denver, Colorado 80212.
Thank you, Bill. Sorry, it comes up as Don and Jacob under your name.
No problem.
And one other thing is Marika Buhlman is also on the phone. She was wondering if she could make a public comment, but she's dialing in, so she wanted to see how she can make a public comment, if you can remind her of how to.
I'll go ahead and do it when we're ready for that. Are there any questions for the applicants from the commissioners? No? All right. And I just have one question, and it's about that window, Bill, that you were asking, you know, can it, if we'd be comfortable with it getting larger. So you do mean larger than it's shown in the drawings today? And okay. And part of that was dropping the sill down so it'd be below the wood line?
Yeah, the top would be maintained where it's shown right now, because we have some framing going in right above that for kind of a loft. So it wouldn't be moving up. We would just be expanding downward into that brick.
So the width would stay the same. And then what height were you hoping to get?
I think, geez, I'm trying to remember exactly what it is. So right now we've got a 3x2 window. I think we'd be happy if we could get, you know, a 3x4 window in there. So basically doubling the size of that.
Okay.
I was honestly just hoping for egress if possible, since it's a bedroom.
And currently how it's shown, I mean, looking at the photo next to the elevation, it looks like, are you recommending the head height move up? Because that, it looks to me like the window, it would be much smaller if you're actually aligning the sill with the bottom of the wood and keeping
yeah, it's a little misleading. That brick that you see actually ends about, I want to say it's 4.5 or 5 feet above the floor right now. So it's pretty tall. The existing floor framing is pretty much right where you see the existing header over the garage door. So there's quite a bit of height there. So what I'm saying is in this proposed version with this window, the top of the proposed window head, we wouldn't be talking about moving that up at all. That would remain the same height.
I understand that's the intent, but it just looks to me like the photo you're showing in the elevation looks, or the window you're showing in the elevation looks a lot bigger than what the opening has allowed in the photo.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the existing window that's here was, I think, 3 feet by 1 foot. We had already kind of gone through the process of resizing that. We had gone back and forth a little bit already. As Dawn mentioned, we had a previous submittal for the certificate of appropriateness, but it had expired. So since that time, we've made a couple minor changes to it. I don't believe that this window was necessarily one of those changes, but yeah, that's what we're asking, is if we would be allowed to basically double the size of this window.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the applicants? All right, thank you both for your time. Okay, are there any comments on this project? If you're joining us by phone, please dial *9. And if you're joining via Zoom, use the hand raise button.
Yes, we have 2 people and I am getting my timer set. It's late in the day. Ozzy's first, then Marika. Go ahead, Ozzy, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'd like to just speak briefly and enthusiastically in support of this project. It's so great they're willing to put in the investment and effort that this requires. In terms of degree of difficulty, this is probably higher than any number of $10 million buildings. So I'm really glad they're doing it. Our neighborhood support is registered in our letter. And then regarding the window that was just being discussed on that street-facing facade, I can clarify that. So our neighborhood committee, we're fortunate enough to have some old timers on the committee. And from our discussion, it became pretty clear what you see there in that elevation right now is not existing construction. That is something that somebody kind of threw on there in the 70s, as best as anyone could figure it out. And originally that was a door in the gable end for lowering ice blocks out of the ice house. And so it had a utilitarian purpose similar to what you would see in like a hayloft door for a typical carriage house. But yeah, thanks, and thanks to the applicant for putting everything they are into doing this.
Thank you, Ozzy.
Great. Okay, Marika, you are next. Go ahead and unmute when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Marika Buhlman, 147 West Avenue. So I'm their immediate neighbor. In the previous photograph, those were my weeds you could see. So I'm super happy about what they're doing. It's just incredibly thoughtful. Since I moved into the neighborhood in 2017, I got to watch them do their house, and they just put as much thought into their carriage house as they did into their house. And it just really shows. And I think it's just going to be a boon to the neighborhood and stabilize the structure, which is, as it is, pretty questionable. I mean, it's been reinforced a little bit on my property line, and I'm in the beginning stages of thinking about a garage, and I for sure don't want it falling on my garage one day, and I'd like it to stay intact for another 130 years. So anyways, overwhelming support. Everything that they've done just really well, and so I'm sure they're going to do just as well on this. And I wanted to say for that window, it's facing Bannock, so there's no privacy issue, and I would fully support them getting a window as big as you or zoning would actually allow for light into the structure, because I know that they've been restricted in terms of other windows that have been allowed in the carriage house, and to have a really livable space that's healthy, and light is really important, and the egress is important to be able to get out well. So yeah, and I'm super happy that they've been able to get that bigger garage door, because for it to be a functional space in this neighborhood, they need to have parking, at least for the next 50 years. Hopefully after that, maybe not, but.
Thank you. All right, any other, okay, that's it. That's all the comments we got. Great. Well, thank you everyone for your time. Let's go ahead and move into deliberation. So what did everybody think about this project?
Chair, this is Julie. For one thing, I'm so excited to see that we are looking at a rehab of an existing building in the backyard. We approve, or, you know, we review so many of these little garages and carriage houses that come down so that a new garage can be put in. So first of all, kudos to the owners. This is wonderful news. My question was, I actually don't have any trouble with the window that I see in my mind, but do we need to see something on paper or electronically, or is that something that perhaps Abby could review, staff review? I'm a little worried about just approving an idea.
Exactly, yes. We can't approve it unless it's actually shown, but you either, you could approve it as it is here today. And then I would know if in your deliberation, you say you're also open to a larger window and they want to come back with a revised application to me. If you, in your deliberation, make it clear that you're fine with that, I could approve that revised application then with a larger window that meets what you talk about today. I could approve that administratively. Or if you want to have that come back to you, you could, conditionally approve it that you want to see, you want to see the window yourself.
Sure, a variety of options. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't actually think that you can have a condition that you need to see it back again.
Correct.
I think conditions have to go back to staff. So,
so we'd have to deny it if we actually wanted to see it. But,
or you could approve it as it is, and if there's a change.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, basically just let staff know guidance in your deliberation, and we'll know how to review it. Any revisions that come in.
So to that point, then, Julie, you'd be supportive of a larger window. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I certainly I would.
Mm-hmm. And what does everybody else think about that? Is everybody in agreement? Larger windows acceptable?
I think it depends on how it gets larger.
Yeah.
Because if historically it was a door that was up in the gable, that seems great. But the applicant seems to think that they want to go down towards the garage doors. And that seems more questionable to me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's kind of why I was thinking about what we need to see come back to us. Because I'm wary of approving something that we don't know.
And Erica, I know you have a comment, but I see Adam. Adam, did you have something to say?
Yes. If you all feel that something should change, but you are unsure how that would meet guidelines, another option you have is to continue this with direction to the applicant to address the window in question. It would come back to you for further review, and then you could either approve or deny based on that. I think that's also something you may want to talk with the applicant about, if they'd be willing to do a continuance. If not, then really the onus is for you to review the project that's in front of you and determine if the project as designed currently meets guidelines or not.
Yeah, thanks. Erica, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say that, the architect's point about it's hard to understand it looking at this elevation. But if you actually look at the other side, the window in that gable is half in the wood itself and then half into the brick. And I feel like that kind of helps me understand a little bit more. I'm not saying that I know exactly what they're suggesting, but it makes me feel more comfortable about them lowering it into the brick, because you can see how that worked historically with that other window.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out, that helped me to realize that you can see that condition on the other side.
I was thinking the same thing, Erica, because the applicant actually said that the ground, and you can see it in the elevations, the floor line of the second floor called out, So that's much lower than the line of the wood. And so where the door would have been, wouldn't have been high up in the gable, it would have been down at that second floor line. So I'm comfortable with the window getting larger in the vertical dimension, as the applicant had mentioned.
Yes, I am too, for that reason.
Okay, so I see some Brad's nodding his head.
Yeah, I agree.
Gary's
I
nodding his head.
think that the other side of the building is a great precedent for what it's gonna feel like.
So before we get down to like, how we're going to form a motion or anything, I just want to step back to Adam's point. Does everyone feel the ADU as presented in this application meets the guidelines? Yes.
Yes.
All right. Great. So we're all on the same page about that. Is there anything besides the window anyone wanted to talk about? No. Okay. So then let's talk about the window. Are we comfortable with making a condition that will come back to staff, or not a condition? We have a few ways to go about it. We could just approve it as is, and we can now talk about whether we're comfortable, like what type of window we're comfortable with, right? And staff would review it. Or we can talk about whether we're not comfortable with it coming back to staff, and then staff will know to bring it back to us if they change the window. Any thoughts on this? I'm comfortable with staff reviewing it. If this is just a window that's getting taller and the sills being dropped, I'm comfortable with that being reviewed by staff. Gary?
I agree, although I think the request was that instead of a 3 foot wide by 2 foot high window, they'd like to do a 3 foot wide by 4 foot high window. I would prefer that rather than that being a single piece of glass, that it would replicate a double hung window if it can't actually be a double hung window.
Sure, like have a mutton.
Right, halfway.
Mm-hmm. To keep those proportions. I think that's a good comment, especially since it's so visible from the street.
I agree with that.
And I don't know what you guys think, but I mean, I'd be comfortable with it being taller than 4 feet. I mean, because that is going to feel kind of squat, especially once you have a mutton in there. Seeing the proportion of the other windows, they're more, they're much more vertical.
Yes, I agree with that as well.
Okay, so I'm seeing some nodding heads, but Anne, I'm not sure where are you in agreement? Okay.
I guess I want to go, I think we can approve what is in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And should now the applicants heard all the testimony, should they, based on that testimony, decide to change the shape or the size, the location, whatever, they can change it and it can go back to staff. Yep. And if staff feels it's way out of bounds of what we've been talking about, it can come to us. But I don't think we can tell them whether it should be tall and thin or short and square or where it goes.
Sure.
I just think all we can do is say what we've got. To Adam's point is we're looking at what we have.
Yeah.
Correct. I agree. Yep. Was just trying to give more feedback so that Abby knows when she reviews it what we find to be, acceptable or not.
I just want to say the one thing that I'm a little sorry about is that we've lost the off-center doors because, for however many years, like 100 years, those doors have been off-center. And I think that's rather charming. And this is not a game, this is not a showstopper or anything like that, but I sort of like it that they managed to get them off-center and keep them that way for such a long time.
I did just want to, I'm sorry, I'm belaboring the point, but that Julie made earlier, but I am just so excited to see this accessory building being used as an ADU, that we're not being asked to approve for its demolition. Like, as someone who gets a lot of heartburn when that happens, I'm really glad to see it. So I'm just so excited, and want to thank the applicants for all the work they're doing with this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good thing to bring up twice. All right, who's going to make the motion?
I can make the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica.
I move to approve application number 2022-COA-028 for the alterations to the carriage house at 153 West First Avenue as per design guideline 2.38, character defining features for the Baker Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Julie. All right, I'll call for the vote. Brad?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary? Sorry.
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Kelly? Aye. All right, the ayes have it. Unanimous vote, and the project is approved. So good luck. It's a big project, and commend you on it. That's the end of our agenda today. Jen, any discussion items, business items?
That's it.
Great. All right, then I will close the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Feel better, Kelly.
You too, Julie.
It's Jan.